Katoa. Welcome to the 10th and last hearing of the People's Select Committee on Pay Equity. I'd like to invite Nanaia Mahuta to open our proceedings with a karakia. Thank you, Nanaia.
Whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga, kia mā kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai, e hiaki ana te atākura, he tio, he huka, he hauhunga, ti hei mauri ora.
Kia ora, thank you. I guess as we did at the beginning of these hearings, we all acknowledge the women who came before us and offer respect for the work that they did to bring us to this day. We hope to be carrying on that tradition. This committee is made up of former members of parliament from across the political spectrum, and I think that's important for us to remember that this is a cross-party initiative. Rhea Bond, Sue Bradford, Jo Hayes, Jackie Blue, Nanaia Mahuta, Belinda Vernon, who is an apology, and of course Dame Marilyn Waring, who will be joining us soon, and without whom the idea for a People's Select Committee would never have come to fruition. We are truly indebted to her for her inspirational leadership. And I hope that this isn't the last time that we see a People's Select Committee, not because there ought to be a need for one, but because it has proved to be a remarkably positive way of actually bringing attention to an important issue. And I think that we need to find more ways of having these conversations in this way. Of course, the People's Select Committee is not covered by parliamentary privilege, so no defamatory comments during the submissions. That would be great. This is also an important opportunity to thank the incredible team of volunteers who have run a tight ship for us. We couldn't have done this without you, Beth, Amy, Len, Bessie, Morgan, and Anna. It just simply wouldn't have been possible without your support and your help. And finally, thank you to all the submitters who have sent in submissions and those who have been willing to appear in person. So, to the first of our last submissions, Sophie Moulin.
Kia ora. Can you hear me okay?
Oh, kia ora.
Yeah, kia
ora. Welcome. far away. You've got, yeah. So please present your submission and then leave us some time so that we can ask you questions.
Sure. I don't know if you're going to questions straight away. My name's Sophie Moulin. I'm a social scientist. My background, I've got a PhD in sociology and social policy from Princeton, and I've also experienced in the UK government where I worked in the Prime Minister's Strategy Unit on economic and social policy. And I'm currently working at the University of Auckland. So I wanted to make a contribution that really just challenges the government's fiscal macroeconomic arguments for the amendment to the pay equity bill. So I know, obviously there was the announcement in May, and then I know in the cabinet paper from the finance minister to cabinet in July 2025 this year, they reiterate that they hope to make this 450 million of savings from the reversal in the rollbacks to the pay equity settlements. And what's really interesting in this paper is you go through and it has cost of living. There are no implications for the cost of living from this proposal. And I just find that quite shocking, really. And sort of blind from a kind of economic perspective or policy perspective. That's quite shocking, really. And I think if we flipped it around and if we thought, okay, if instead of trying to increase women's wages in female-dominated sectors to male wages, what if we did the reverse? What if we dropped male wages down to female-level wages? There would be a massive drop in household incomes. There would be a massive rise in poverty. there would be a massive rise in eligibility for working tax credits, family tax credits, accommodation supplement. And there would just be unacceptable politically to have several households losing, say, on average, 15% of their annual income. And so as I sort of thought about this policy from that perspective, I thought, well, actually, this policy, not only is it not, I'm sure you've heard a lot of people around the legal and the equity problems for this, and issues around the quality of the sector, retention of high quality workers, but really even just on the macro finances. I mean, you've got significant women in the direct employee of the New Zealand government, and halting or preventing pay equity claims will result in minor savings, really quite small in the scheme of public spending. You're looking at about 1% of public spending, and that's assuming this is, this has gone, one claim then raises wages in other sectors too. But also you've got to weigh that against what you're doing for the rest of the economy, which is, so, the funded sector, okay, so that might have some knock-ons if contracting employees, like for instance, all the kindergarten teachers are paid indirectly from the government. If you were to raise the wage of kindergarten teachers, which most mothers of kindergarten teachers would actually want to see, of kindergarten age children would want to see, that could come, that bridging gap could come in part, at least, from profits from the private sector providers. So when you're looking at that knock-on, actually the direct cost to government are quite small. Then if we look in the private sector, again, it's not insignificant. We're talking about significant pay equity gaps. So there would be savings. So if, for instance, if we thought of big companies would make parallel claims, cross-occupational claims, that's actually going to significantly, it will have an impact on net profits, on the overall wage bill. But, that can be absorbed. I mean, if we think about that compared to, these are real challenges. This is sort of direct challenges to some of the big problems in New Zealand policy, which is, attracting people in those low to mid-wage jobs. And, if you have a policy that's going to be largely funded from the private sector, that's going to significantly raise wages and household incomes, why would you not want to do it? Why would you not want to increase incomes? That's the whole point, right? The point is of growth. Why would you not want to increase incomes in that? The inflation argument, I think, is really weak here because we haven't seen much wage inflation. Inflation is coming from, costs, basically, inflationary costs, which is in part global, it's from food, it's from energy. It's not coming from wages, but wages have stagnated. And internationally comparative, particularly with Australia, where there's an open labour market, wages are really low, particularly in female-dominated sectors, and that's why people are struggling to recruit and retain nurses and teachers, for instance. And this would be a way of doing that in a way that's actually quite cost-effective. Likewise, if you're wanting to reduce child poverty, which ostensibly the government's still committed to doing. And you say, well, we don't want to pay, we're not paying any more, raising taxes, we've got limited fiscal things. Well, what would you want to do? You'd want to raise wages, and particularly women's wages in these low, because we've got a high minimum wage, but beyond that, we actually have very low to middle income jobs, precise jobs that we'll be looking to raise. And so if you ask me, as a, if a policymaker asked me what would be a good policy that you could address child poverty, you could address the cost of living, you could increase incomes to households, you could even downstream, reduce, people would have higher retirement savings, for instance. You're really boosting household income, you're getting the growth that you want through this policy. And I think that fiscal argument, that macroeconomic argument just doesn't stand up.
Thank you. I mean, you've given a really detailed analysis of, a perspective that really hasn't had a lot of coverage. I think that there's been a focus on the cost to the government, whereas you've looked at sort of some of the net benefits that really aren't taken into account. So I just wonder if you just want to just to highlight that. I think that would be useful from a public perspective to have a sort of a highlight of the key elements that have been left out of this argument that there is this huge cost to central government.
Yeah, so there's a cost to central government, but you've got to weigh that against increased tax. People are taxed on their incomes. If their incomes increase, you get interest tax. As incomes increase, particularly in this group, I mean, it's very targeted policy, actually. You're going to be lifting people out of, working tax code thresholds. So actually, government spending is going to go down on things like accommodation supplement, family tax credits, working for families. These are big, these are not small items. And, these people are in work and they're not able to get out of poverty because their wages are too low. This is a known phenomenon around the world. Employment they're not unemployed, they're in work, but they're in women's work, and that's why they're not earning enough. And I would recommend this to any policy makers around the world, but I think particularly in New Zealand, where you've got really low wages comparatively speaking in these sectors. People are struggling to recruit people. It's a big driver of immigration, of key workers. It's a big driver of poor quality in those services because turnover matters. You don't want a new kindergarten teacher every 3 months for your kids. You don't want a new social worker that's not got experience. You want people to highly skilled people to be supported in this sector. And a big part of that is the money. And I think if you think about what it would be like if you were basically proposing the reverse for men, you'd be saying, okay, this is going to be massively deflationary. Why would you take 15, say 10 to up to 30% of income out of households? Men wouldn't stand for it. And I think it speaks to this fact of, that the male wage was protected, particularly in this country. There were high wages that attracted people to this country since colonization. So this idea that, there would be market adjustments, I just don't think that stands up, because the male wage has been protected from market adjustments, since for a very long time, basically. We haven't actually had that. And I think that this is actually a really good way of doing it, but actually has very limited fiscal costs compared to, say, trying to expand benefit system. Not that you won't necessarily do that as well.
Yes. Now, when I was introducing the MPs before, I missed out Steve Chadwick, so I'll invite her perhaps to ask a question, because she is very much with us.
Thank you. And Sophie, I wonder if you've ever done examination of immigration, when we're looking at the net migration flux that's happening at the moment. Are we attracting in workers that we need in this country? Because it's all based on high wealth workers, and we need the workers on the ground to fix the gap.
That's right. And I mean, these are people that have trained the government has spent money training these people, not just at school, but right through university, through loan systems. It's nothing. It's still a subsidized sector. Why would you not want to, even if you could replace these jobs through, immigrants, why would you not want to hold on to your human capital, in that way? I mean, I'm an immigrant to New Zealand. I think a lot of people want to stay in New Zealand. They want to raise their children here. There's a lot that they like about it. And that the reason they can't is cost of living. And the reason the cost of living is so high is that wages, particularly in these sectors, say, the nursing sector, I think, is a key example. I mean, nurses in Australia are paid a huge amount more than they're paid here.
Yeah. Thank you.
And Sue Bradford?
Kia ora, Sophie. Thank you very much for bringing this quite a different perspective from most of the submissions we've had. Thanks for bringing it so clearly to us this morning. But I also just wanted to say how much I enjoyed your parody, your satire. That you put a lot of work into it. When I first started reading it, I didn't realise it. I was quite shocked, and then gradually it sunk in. And I thought, oh wow, this is amazing, because that really strongly brought forward just what you've been talking about, how ridiculous it is that we just let this slide because it's women's wages that we're losing. If it was men's wages, and flipping it right around is a really neat way of looking at it. I've just got, given your background and skills, I'm just curious what comment you'd make about the fact that about half the budgeted money that was lost to pay equity by the government's move under urgency, undemocratically and everything else, over $6 billion of the savings from not going through with canning pay equity, basically, was being put or is being put to offsetting costs of machinery and capital equipment for businesses and farmers. And I'm just wondering, like in an overview way, how you feel about that and the impact on the economy and on people and on growth in inverted commas, in comparison to what you've been talking to us about.
Thanks. See, I didn't actually know that was the spending that had been hypothecated against. I was looking at the budget as a whole, but yeah, and I actually had a lot of fun writing the parody. Brought together a lot of economic sociology done, but also I did have training in economics, master's level, in the US, and I think a lot of economists would actually agree with me. But what's interesting is just how and why the parody works. I think is just how gendered the whole policy making and the economic argument is. That's why I sort of did it as a sort of, I'm a bipartisan economic analyst. Well, of course it's not. It's political, and you have priorities baked into that and assumptions baked into that economic modeling. And too often, I think, and it is a masculine move, is to just say, "Oh well, the math. You don't know the math. It's just." And of course, there's an equity issue too. There are legal issues that other people couldn't speak to, and I'm glad to see that they have. And there's union issues, But I think just it really needs, the gender's right the way through every economic institution. And your point is as well. It's also linked to, as you say, that I think what you're alluding to there is about the kind of growth and about the priorities that we want. One of the jokes in there is that there's this idea of growth that's separate from actually increased human welfare and well-being of households. And even economists would recognize that is household income, it matters. And it's just quite ironic, really, that they have all this. It's just economic growth, right? It's, this is what we're trying to achieve. We're trying to achieve that growth. Well, then when you look at it, it's like, well, then why would you not want to increase household incomes in this way? As I said, the inflationary argument doesn't work. The argument it just doesn't stand up. And yeah, I think there's this model of productivity there, which is interesting. There's this kind of capital investment thing, and we talk about infrastructure. Well, the care sector is infrastructure, and I think Elizabeth Warren talked about it in this way in the United States. I think it's really effective. It's the work that enables all the other work. In the same way that, if roads don't work, lots of other traded economic activities don't occur. If people don't have childcare, if they don't have elder care, if they don't have, nursing and health and well-being, then, what are we doing? And I think the AI actually argues this, they're supposed to be adapting to AI technologies. Well, the jobs that we're going to want to do, that we really want the real human jobs, my sociologist colleagues, the last human job, it's about this connective labor. It's about the work which we do as human beings, this kind of relational work. And that is traditionally women's work. And that's kind of why it's been underpriced, right? But it's not undervalued. And I think people do actually, they do value that work, but it's got this gendered assumptions like, oh, we value it. Well, then if you value it, pay for it. And that's what the economists should say people do. And so, I think we need to sort of take on that argument head on, as well as just saying, okay, this is an equity concern.
Yeah, I think in terms of COVID, we had the expression, essential workers, and we jumped on our balconies or onto the street to clap them at 7 o'clock at night, but actually where was the value, yes, but the price, the paying properly for the work that's done, and I do think that the issues around relational issues, the gendered nature of the policy advice throughout the government, it's not just through one particular department, and the fact at the end of the day it's about political choices. I think you've made an incredible contribution to our mahi here, so thank you very much, not only for injecting a bit of humour through your written submission, but also I think putting it in a way that confronts the real issue. So thank you very, very much for your submission.
Oh, you're very welcome, and I wish you all the best with it. Thank you for doing this really important mahi.
Kia ora. Thank you.
Kia ora.
And now we move on to Te Rūnanga or Ngā Toa Āwhina, and I think, I'm not sure who we have appearing.
Gina and Mike.
Is it?
Gina Houston and Mike Tana. I've got
no, but I've been told that there might be someone different. Mike and Marcia.
Kia ora,
Mike and Marcia. Yeah. So sorry, Mike. I just didn't have. I don't have your image in front of me. If you'd like to leave some time at the end for some questions, but perhaps introduce your submission, which we've read. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just going to introduce our submitter because I think she'll be doing the introductions. But to our wahine toa, te mea, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. So it's great. And then Naya, it's my cousin there as well. Look, this is like a family, so I'm not going to try and take up all the time. What I'm trying to do is see if Marcia is on. Marcia, are you there? She was there a minute ago. Just while I'm waiting for her, Marcia Puru is our acting Te Kaihautu Māori for the PSA, and she has been managing the work within the Manawahine claim, and so she's the perfect person to speak to this. We did have our tuakana, Joanna Houston, speaking, but she's actually not able to attend. She's off on her way to an Indigenous conference in Australia for our Indigenous unionists. So Marcia's here to speak. Casey, is Marcia there?
I'm here. Can you see me?
Anna, handing it over to you, Marcia.
Kia ora. Tēnā tātou te whare, tēnā koutou katoa. Ko Marcia Puru tō kingoa, no Waikato tainui a hau. Ko hau te acting kaihautu o te pukinga here te kinga mahi, nō reira tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. I just wanted to mihi to the panel for allowing us to speak to you today on how this legislation change to pay equity is quite damning, particularly to wahine Māori and to women and to workers that we represent at the PSA. I'm here representing the Public Service Association, namely Te Rūnanga o Ngā Toa Āwhina, our Māori members of over 10,000 members who strongly oppose the Equal Pay Amendment Act 2025 and the extenuation of 33 active pay equity claims. So I'm going to take it as our submission's been read, and I'm just going to continue on because I can't see anything other than you, Mike.
Oh dear. Well, talk to me, Marcia. Talk to me.
I will. What I will focus on is the impact that this change will have on wahine Māori and their experiences shared with us by our members. What we can say is that these actions undermine decades of progress towards equity in Aotearoa, impacting whānau, hapu, and iwi, and disproportionately harming wahine Māori, who remain among the most of the undervalued and underpaid in the workforce. So I'm just going to share some whakaaro that we have been shared by our members with us. You know, education system failed wahine Māori through colonisation. Our members have experienced that. Our taonga tuku iho, our te reo, our cultural beliefs, our tikanga are being attacked currently by this government, but Māori are resilient and always have been and will continue to fight the injustices that they've experienced, so we continue to do that. Change processes, though, are undervaluing Māori and the removal of Māori-specific roles to enact te tiriti o Waitangi and Māori strategies across departments or workplaces, and to provide a more engaged treaty partner that's been attacked at the moment. And we find that amazing as to how they can do that, but also shows the government and their thinking around how much Māori means to them, and te tiriti o Waitangi. We have less Māori recruited into employment as it is. That's a fact, but what's worse is for less money. Wahine Māori have experienced bias, discrimination and racism in their work environment and their workplaces. They've expressed deep frustration by the fact that wahine Māori get paid less than their counterparts for doing the exact same job. It's unfair, and it's real mamae to them about being discriminated for being female, but mostly being Māori. So te tiriti o Waitangi practices that are experienced in most employment, they believe, are tokenistic at best, and the implementation is not genuine, nor is it inclusive. So when Māori have skills that they apply to their work, some of these skills are not part of their expected roles or job descriptions, but they offer their cultural practices with aroha. But it's not received, recognised or respected in its whole entirety. Cultural safety practices for Māori are non-existent, and there are some practices that are the will of non-Māori or overseas leaders who have no idea of cultural practices here in Aotearoa. Wahine Māori should never feel like they've nothing to offer, nor the need to hide their status to avoid racism. Their education incurred bullying, lower expectations, and failing achievement over time, which shortened their time at school. So, of course, getting into recruitment or into jobs or into employment has been difficult, and they've had to retrain themselves to do that. But again, in an environment that we are in at the moment, in a government that we have at the moment that doesn't respect Māori or place Māori in these roles where they should be, is disappointing. So what we are saying is that there are individual, organisational and systematic barriers to progress under the law, and we aim to pursue these injustices for our members. I can express that one of our members expressed she was discriminated against because of her gender. That's common across our sectors. But another member told us her experience of encountered institutional racism and racist treatment mounted up as little discriminatory things that have been said to her over time, built up to being, bullying experiences to her. Another member also expressed her conscious bias. This is conscious bias that got worse when she received her moko kauwai. And so, that's futuristic of Māoritanga. Wearing a moko kauwai is very significant and beautiful, might I add, in our culture, te wahine Māori and our tānema. But again, it's those little things, and that cultural conscious bias is just experienced in their workplaces is terrible. So there are many examples that our members have expressed to us as part of the mana wahine claim that we're still pursuing. But the point I guess we're making is that this government doesn't respect Māori and what we bring to the table. Wahine Māori and workers across our union are saying they are worth it, and they are. They want to make a better tomorrow for their tamariki and mokopuna and generations to come. Pay equity matters to them, and it's not just about pay. Te Wahine Māori is about respecting their rights under Te Tiriti o Waitangi for iwi, hapu, whānau, tangata whenua, and workers in employment. So I'll leave you with that. Me aro koe ki te hā o ahu hene ahuone, pei to the dignity and power of women. Ngā mihi ki a koutou katoa. Kia ora.
Kia ora, and thank you very much. And look, I know that Jackie had her hand up first, but I'm going to go to Nanaya first because I don't think that I noticed that her hand up was the last time. So I'll start with Nanaya and then come back to Jackie. So thank you, Marcia, very much.
Kia ora.
Mihi ana kia kurua Marcia, kurua ko Mike, me te kaho a korua whakatau ki tēnei o ngā kaupapa. I really wanted to get a sense, because you had said, Marcia, that you've gathered and heard quite a lot of feedback from the membership around these issues. Given that Māori and Pasifika women actually are very heavily domiciled in the care and service sectors, what are some of the intergenerational benefits that you've observed when matters of pay are being progressively addressed? That's one part of the question. The other part of the question is how's the membership thinking about their future with the current signals of the government and them maybe choosing to go into another profession or something else, or getting more jobs. I'm not sure what you're hearing back, but I'd be very interested to hear how they're reading the signals from the government in relation to pay equity issues.
Ai, kia ora, tēnā tātou, tēnā koe, Nanaya. Great questions, and I'll try and work my way through it. Care and support workers are the hardest workers we have, and we support the mahi that they do. They go out into people's homes, they look after our disabled, they look after our people of care who need care, and at times we don't have enough workers within that space. But where there are Māori workers and obviously Māori clients, there's not enough there either. So I did mention recruitment and what that looked like. It's hard to get workers in the sector of work in general across our sectors, local government, DHB, public service. But what we are saying is the fight to get anywhere across the pay, whether it be gender pay principles, or whether it be pay gaps in general, for us, it's been quite difficult in that sector of work. And we continue to push and we continue to fight, but it's really, really, I'd have to say, quite difficult. Bargaining is one way, as you know, that we try and get the best for our members and our membership. But I can honestly say that that fight has been just hard work for people who do such amazing work for our clients out there. So, I mean, that would be my whakaaro on the first question, Nanaya. The second one, our membership in terms of signalling from the government and what they've experienced, where our experience change management's been huge. We lose Māori that have been I want to say there's been years of great work now being seen as undone through this government. What we had maybe 5-6 years ago has now been all undertaken or taken away from us or removed. So what I am saying is that our members are telling us that we shouldn't be working under a government that doesn't respect our tikanga, doesn't respect te tiriti o Waitangi. We're being attacked under all areas of te reo, of things that our cultural practices. You know, it's really difficult now to have kōrero with employers around these things that are really pertinent to our members. And through bargaining, again, we have to have these conversations, but it's almost like we want a better treaty partner, we're willing to work with you, but we're just not getting a sense, I guess, in some areas and some sectors of work that's continuing. So yes, coalition government has had a massive, I guess, attack on us as a people, but like I said, Māori are resilient. They will stand and fight for the injustices that they believe is their taonga tuku iho. Yeah.
Thank you, Marcia.
Thank you very much. And Jackie.
Kia ora, Marcia and Mike. Thank you so much. Marcia, that's a really powerful submission. Anyone who was possibly sitting on the fence before hearing that would not be on the fence anymore. Couple of comments. The departmental disclosure statement in the bill said that there wasn't time for the ministers to consider the Treaty of Waitangi principles and whether it was consistent with it. And I wondered what you thought about that statement. I think I know what you're going to say. And also, have you seen your local MP about what you've spoken about? Have you talked to them about it? Have you made any, application to see them?
We are doing everything we can, to be honest, across our sectors. We've written to the local government around the disproportionate issues we've had with Māori wards of late. Some of our candidates across the motu and 4 councils probably that we know about, we've written to them to say that we want a meeting and we want to fix what's happened with our Māori wards candidates who never got their information sent in the booklets, which is pertinent to the communities and for voting. So we've written to them. We've also gone and visited and stood and picketed in front of local MPs across town, across Aotearoa, where it's, especially for CPS, Community Public Service, our community support workers, definitely fighting still and getting out in front of our local MPs. I'm thinking of Hamilton, where I'm from. Tama Pōtaka is definitely one that we've actually stood in front of twice. But it's about being heard, and it's about our voice being heard and being shared so that they understand. I absolutely, and unions want to be consulted. Our people want to be consulted. This was never consulted on. Nor was the treaty principles bill, which I'm thankful we had so many, Māori across and non-Māori even submit to both bills and the regulatory standards bills, which is all really important. And it attacks and breaches Te Tiriti o Waitangi. So I'd say I definitely oppose those 3 things, and we will continue to oppose them and mobilise to support getting out there.
Kia ora. Thank you. We're just very close to finishing time on this one, but Steve, I'll take a quick question from you.
Yeah, kia ora, Marcia. With 10,000 workers, are you noticing a change in their conditions of employment, casualisation or part-time?
Yeah, we've with the new Act changes, especially the Holidays Act changes, that has a huge implication on our members. And to be honest with you, it's only just come in. So a lot of our union, particularly PSA, is looking at ways in which we can counteract and refute some of the changes in the Holidays Act. But I have no doubt we will, Steve. I have no problem to think that if we have to be not reactionary, we have to be proactive around how we manage that. So yeah, absolutely on board there.
Kia ora. Look, thank you very much for your submission. Very powerful, and it certainly has, I think, made quite an impact this morning. So thank you very much for turning up on our last day of public hearings and making such a powerful contribution. Thank you very much. Kia ora.
Ngā mihi. Kia ora.
The next is the PSA Women's Network, and I think we've got Nancy McShane, Karina Meyers, Christie Cox, and Anna McLean.
Kia ora.
Kia ora. Who have we got there? Oh, Nancy, is it?
Nancy's there. I'm Christie. We're just having a bit of trouble getting Karina in, but we will work with what we've got.
Yep.
Kia ora koutou. Thank you for the opportunity to hear us speak to you today. My name is Christie, and I'm here to introduce the PSA Women's Network Committee. Speaking to you today, we have Nancy McShane and Karina Meyers. Nancy is our co-convener of the PSA Women's Network Committee, and she has been staunchly fighting for pay equity for far longer than realistically should be necessary. And we also have Karina, and Karina is a member of our Women's Network Committee, and she works as a senior clinician probations officer, and she will be speaking on the ethnic concerns around pay equity. I'm a member of the PSA Women's Network Committee and a PSA delegate and support worker in the community mental health sector. I'm one of the 65,000 care and support workers that had their pay equity claims scrapped. My work keeps people alive, and beyond that, it supports people to be thriving, active members of our communities. The scrapping of pay equity is estimated to be costing me $145 per week. Now, that might not seem like much to this current government, who seems to think that they can live off $60 worth of groceries in a week. That's a significant amount of money to me. I love my job and I'm good at what I do, but that passion for my job does not pay my bills, the bills that I'm currently struggling to pay. We, as a committee, passionately believe that the scrapping of pay equity was abhorrent, and the idea that it needs to be a strong, genuine framework and to be a transparent and inclusive process is ironically the very thing that they denied to us when they rushed this through under urgency. I will now pass you over to Nancy to speak.
Kia ora tēnā koutou katoa. We appear to have some trouble still getting Karina on, I think. So I will go first, and then hopefully Karina will be on after me if we can manage to achieve that.
Can you put your video on, or is that not possible?
I have put my video on. You're not able to see me?
Nope.
Sorry, I'm not sure why that is. Just quickly.
I don't know if our team can help out at all. We've got your name. That's all.
Is that?
Is there something covering the camera, Nancy?
Can you see me now?
No, but it doesn't matter. We can hear you orally, and
Right. Apologies. I'm not sure why that is, but I'll just continue with my submission. Tēnā koutou katoa. My name is Nancy McShane. I'm a PSA delegate in the Christchurch Mental Health Service and co-convener of the PSA Women's Network. It is my honour and privilege to make this oral submission to the People Select Committee for Pay Equity. I thank both the committee and the PSA Women's Network for granting me that opportunity. As a New Zealander, as a feminist, and as a woman, I am outraged that the coalition government has chosen to undo decades of progress towards pay equity by vetoing the Equal Pay Amendment Act. Like many New Zealanders, I was shocked when the coalition announced it would be amending the pay equity framework under urgency without any public consultation. The government has misled the New Zealand public by claiming that the repeal of the Equal Pay Amendment Act will make the claims process more robust, workable, and sustainable. In truth, it will do the exact opposite. Rather than assisting New Zealand women to be paid equitably, the government has silenced the very voices the 2020 legislation sought to uplift. Women working in female-dominated occupations now face near impossible barriers to raising a successful pay equity claim. Years of dedicated research have been nullified, higher thresholds have been imposed. Worse, the limiting of male comparator roles to the same or similar sectors and a 10-year stand-down period before a new claim can even be raised mean that women working in female-dominated occupations such as care and support have been condemned to continue living in poverty. I was one of several union delegates on the negotiating team for the PSA, DHB admin and clerical claim for pay equity. This groundbreaking claim, representing over 10,000 DHB administration workers, was the first to be settled under the Equal Pay Amendment Act of 2020, brought in by the then Labour government. This claim not only ended decades of unjustifiably low pay for DHB administrators, it opened the door for the 32 other claims that followed. The government's attempts to discredit the DHB admin claim are contemptible. Our claim was robust, exhaustive, and independently audited to ensure non-bias. Hundreds of DHB administration workers across a broad range of roles were interviewed and details gathered, outlining the skills, knowledge, qualifications, and experience required to do their jobs, as well as the risks and responsibilities their roles entailed. The Labour government was meticulous in analysing the information we provided, at times requesting that we provided further evidence. We willingly gathered and submitted this additional evidence, often providing more data than had been requested to ensure our claim was robust. The government has tried to discredit the male comparator roles used in the claims. I've been challenged regarding the comparator roles for the DHB admin claim, chiefly by men, all of whom confidently told me that administration is nowhere near as complex or as dangerous as the work undertaken by the male comparator roles we utilised. My response was that these men may wish to spend a week or two working in the mental health service before making these assumptions. One administrator at my hospital has been cornered by a patient wielding an axe. Another saved the life of a security guard who was being viciously beaten in front of her reception desk. Our buildings are regularly set on fire by patients. The mental and physical dexterity required to cope with this more than matches that of our male comparator roles. The government's attempts to discredit the male comparator roles has included a deliberate and calculated misrepresentation of pay equity as equal pay. This false narrative was utilised with the intent of confusing the New Zealand public and leading them to believe the 33 claims to date were illegitimate. The mental and emotional harm women have experienced due to the government's actions is utterly inexcusable. My own long and arduous quest for pay equity illustrates the ridiculous lengths to which women in female-dominated occupations must go to be paid fairly. I fought through earthquakes, terrorist attacks, and a global pandemic to help settle the PSA's pay equity claim for DHB administrators. The degree of hardship I witnessed my colleagues suffer during this period is unconscionable. Some of the women I work with lost their homes during the Christchurch earthquakes, then discovered their appallingly low incomes prevented them from securing alternative accommodation. Why? Because landlords with surviving properties decided to capitalise on the housing shortage and put their rents up. It fills me with rage knowing this government has stolen $12.8 billion of funding for women's pay equity and given a sizable portion of it to landlords. I've seen women in our health service lose their teeth because they could not afford a dentist. Women forced to stay in violent relationships because their low incomes prevented them from leaving. Elderly women working well into their 70s and some into their 80s because they could not afford to retire. Fighting for pay equity has been one of the most difficult things I've done in my lifetime. And here I stand 17 years later, still fighting. In 2018, Christine Bartlett was voted New Zealander of the Year in recognition of her efforts to achieve pay equity for care and support workers. Her dedication led to a $2 billion settlement. Despite this, care and support workers have seen their hard-won increases clawed back over time. Many are now back on the minimum wage and must wait another 10 years before they can even raise another claim to address this. In 2023, I was awarded a Queen's Service Medal for my services to women in equal pay. Settlement of the PSA DHB admin claim ended decades of poverty wages for DHB administrators. Like the care workers, however, we quickly found that our pay equity rates were also not being maintained. The message from government was that maintenance of our rates was not affordable. 3 years on from settlement, our claim is also now cancelled. In 2024, Sanoa Ma'ali, Dr. Karina spoke at the United Nations regarding the significant ethnic gender pay gap that persists in this country. She has received numerous accolades for her relentless advocacy, yet the appalling pay gaps for Māori and Pacifica women still continue. It is disingenuous in the extreme to dispense awards, medals, and accolades to those of us who have fought so passionately for this cause, if we then allow a government to wipe decades of progress in just one foul sweep. The changes this coalition government has made to the Equal Pay Amendment Act have regressed the pay equity movement in this country by more than 50 years. This is not acceptable. Kate Shepherd fought for equal pay for work of equal value at the same time as women's suffrage. As of this September, the women of this country have had an equal right to vote for 132 years. We will not wait another 132 years for financial equality. I urge the People's Select Committee, a committee of representatives from across the political spectrum, to stand with New Zealand women. The government's changes to our pay equity legislation must be repealed. Let us work together to ensure this is achieved. Our history demands it. The women of New Zealand demand it. Thank you.
Kia ora, Nancy. Thank you for your passion and commitment. I could feel Kate Shepherd being channeled through you, as I always do on Women's Suffrage Day. Thank you so much for sharing that kōrero with us. I don't know, does Anna wish to address the submission as well?
So Karina was meant to speak with as well, but she's not able to make it. I have her notes if you would like to hear her words too, if we have time.
Well, we can take a little bit more time. I don't see any hands up for questions, so I'm just, but perhaps, because you can always submit things in writing to us
You guys hear
afterwards.
me? I would like to say my own if available.
Does look like we do have Karina.
Oh, you do have Karina. Sorry, right, Karina. I can't see you at this stage.
Karina Poko Ingawa. I'm a mother, a wife, a nana, a probation officer, a mentor, a Rūnanga delegate, an activist, a kira, an ardent rugby fan, a proud wahine toa. Like all women, I have many strings to my bow. On my employment journey in the past, I have worked in the low-paid role for 20 years as a sewing machinist. The maximum I earned in that role was $1 per hour more than the minimum wage when I attained the role of supervisor for 20 staff. I have personal experience of a claim no longer meeting the new pay equity benchmark. The probation officer and senior practitioner pay equity claim. Our claim was that the Employment Relations Authority, a representative group of staff, had been asked to start preparing to be witnesses at the hearing before the fateful day on the 6th of May 2025 when the rug was pulled from beneath us. Our claim no longer meets the benchmark we formerly it did due to the fact that 66% of our workforce are women. 70% is the newly imposed cut-off point. The new legislation means we can no longer raise a claim. The PSA Women's Network mission statement is, by women, of women, for women. Pay equity is at the forefront of our grave concern due to the devastating impact the recent changes to pay equity have had on the members we represent. Our members are the carers of Aotearoa, encompassing roles ranging from care and support workers, teachers, nurses, probation officers, administration officers, to name a few. Our members are very skilled at what they do. However, their pay does not reflect this. The Women's Network Committee is particularly concerned about the impact on Māori, Pacific and Asian wahine, who are disproportionately represented in underpaid sectors and already suffer the combined effects of racial and gender-based inequities. This division entrenches intergenerational poverty in our communities. The changes worsen pay gaps, particularly for those in already underpaid sectors. We highlight the contradiction in dismantling protections while claiming commitment to equity under Kia Tōpoto. Progress achieved through efforts like Te Whakapiri is now under threat. The Women's Network Committee stands with affected workers and calls on the public and allies to unite against this discriminatory legislation and uphold the right for women to be paid fairly through pay equity. Thank you for your time and attention. Ma'aro ki te hā o hine a ho one. Pay heed to the dignity of women. Thank you.
Kia ora, Karina. Thank you so much. It was much more powerful, I think, to hear your voice articulating those words. That certainly came from the heart. So thank you very much for that. We've really only got a couple of minutes left, so I'm just thinking. Why has everyone disappeared? Are we? Did anyone else want to speak from the PSA? Or I'll go to Jackie for a question. I seem to have lost everyone.
Hey, that was wonderful. And Nancy, if we could do a standing ovation or have an emoji of clapping hands, I would have done it. But I really thought your notes were so powerful. And I just wondered if all notes could be made available to the committee would be wonderful. And thank you for your presentation this morning.
Thank you. I appreciate your comments. It'll be my pleasure to share my notes. I'll forward them to you.
That's great. Now, was there anything else from the PSA? Did Anna want to say anything?
No, I'm just here for support, but obviously...
Oh, just here for support. All right,
about everything that they've said. Amazing submission.
Yeah, but I think Jackie's point about getting the information, the actual words that were spoken, sent to us, that would be fantastic. All right. Well, look, thank you very much for the PSA Women's Network. I was involved in a union women's network many, many years ago, so it's always very powerful to hear from those that are representing the interests of their women members through organisations like the PSA. So thank you very much for your submission today. Thank you. Kia ora.
Kia ora.
Kia ora.
And now we move to another women's committee, this time E2. And I think we have, is it Wheeti, Haenga? And I've had Monique, Nia, Karen, Sue and Susan. I think there's quite a lineup here to support the E2 Women's Committee submission. Who shall I hand over to here? We've read your submission, and so we would like you to, touch on the key points and leave time for questions from members of the committee. I'm sure something's going to happen soon. Jackie, do you want to turn off your mic?
Yeah, well, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that's all right. It's just sometimes we forget to turn off our mics, and then any noise that's made in the room brings the camera to focus on things. How are we going?
We seem to have two groups of E2 in here. We've got disability and mental health and the Women's Committee.
Well, I've got the Women's Committee next. So, and Monique, you're with the Women's Committee? Yes. Yep. So who else are you waiting for? And with
we've
you?
Got Susan, we've got Nia, we're just waiting on Wheeti, and Sukara.
Right. Oh, there's one I recognise. Hello, Susan.
Hello, my friend. Yeah. This was going to be a challenge for us, and we thought we were going to be put in a breakout room to make sure all the technical stuff was sorted, but we've just popped on as panelists, so I'm not sure how this is going to go.
Oh,
because we're not techie.
Okay, look, apparently Wheeti's not here, so if you guys can
there's
start...
Nia. No, I can see Nia up there.
Oh, yes, hello, Nia. Yes, I can see her. as they come in, that they will be brought in. So, but if you would like to start on the submission, as I say, we've read the submission and we'd like to hear the key points from you, but leave time for questions. Thank you.
Okay, well, Wheeti is our convener and she was going to do the introduction. So I feel I'm here as support. So I'll maybe start with Monique.
Monique, perhaps if you start, if you take yourself off mute and this is your time to, to give it a crack. Go on.
Hi again. To refresh your memory, I'm Monique Behankito, a home support worker from Gisborne. I'm an E2 delegate, a central rep for the National Standing Women's Committee and deputy convener of the Community Support Services Industry Council. In my previous submission, we spoke to you about the process and how it felt having the claim ripped away from us 1,040 days in. I spoke to you about the life-changing effect that the Christine Bartlett case had on my children's lives. Today, I want to speak to you about bad faith. When we started the process, we did the hard work, thousands of woman hours, getting each stage signed off by all parties to have it challenged in the last minute, in the last steps. Steps that had been signed off months earlier, stalling the process until after the election. We were then meeting with the then Minister of Health, Dr. Wheeti, who kept assuring us that money was put aside to settle our claims on numerous occasions, just to find out that there were already back in discussion that that they were already thinking of scrapping pay equity. While we are able to undertake a new case with the current framework, there are no male-dominated comparators within our sector, which would mean we'll never achieve true pay equity. This means we're in the race back to the bottom. We have started to become the working poor again, where we have to scramble to pay rent. In this economy, a block of butter and a block of cheese cost more than 1 hour of pay. We have people who will never be able to afford their own homes or retire. My oldest member is 86. With our ageing population and the aged care being the fastest growing sector in our country, it is the least funded. Pay equity is just one part of the problem facing our sector, but it is the main one. If we were paid the 30% undervaluation, it would go back into local economies that are struggling, as shown in the Christine Bartlett case. With no pay equity or clear progression paths, our industry is not appealing to our youth, yet it is the most rewarding and fulfilling job I ever fell into. And I'm extremely passionate about it. We put our lives on hold, our bodies on the line to put others' needs above our own. Although we wouldn't have it any other way, pay equity sure would help make work-life balance a little bit easier. Thank you again.
Thank you. I'm not sure who's speaking next, but I see Nia and Sue have got their mics on. Yeah, can you switch your mics off when you're not talking? Because as soon as you just breathe, then the camera switches to you. So, but who's next, Susan?
The natural flow would be Sue Carter next and then Nia.
Okay. Thank you.
Ngā mihi kia koutou katoa, ko Sue Carter taku ingoa. I'm a union organiser for E2 and I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak to you all today. This has been such a disappointing, I can't even think of the words without swearing, how this could be. That in 2017, when we won the pay equity settlement and it was agreed that we could take a case in 2022, I was blessed to be part of the team that interviewed women from disability, community support and aged care workers. One of the things that struck me the most at every interview, I would start with, what we're here for is to determine what is the skills, what is the effort, what is your job. And if almost every one of them said to me, I just care. I just care. That's what my job is. And that's why I keep doing it. And it's quite moving that, frustrating and all those words, that this process was agreed, and it was agreed with milestones that we would do each process, and it was signed off by the Ministry of Business and Innovation. And those interviews that we did, they were time consuming. They were, due to that depth of engagement and repetitive nature of their review and the approval steps, each interview was transcribed and then approved by the interviewee before being sent to the pay equity team. And then occasionally the interviews were returned with follow-up questions. They were thorough. And then all of those versions were sent, were signed, that process, that milestone was signed off as true and accurate. At no point during this process was it highlighted, but we might get rid of it. We might not honour it. We were interviewing MPs from all of the parties, all agreeing that we know that this has to happen. Women support all of families. No longer can we accept that it's pin money. And the value of the work that the women do outscored the comparators that we used were the prison guards, customs officers, fisheries officers, all people facing, all subsidised by the government and male dominated, but they didn't have the skills that these women have. When we looked at the prison guards, if they have a difficult person, they've got a team to deal with that. The women in dementia wards deal with it on their own. The community support workers, sometimes they're the only human that old person's seeing. And they have to be able to determine what their health is, how they're deteriorating. So to have dismissed this like it was nothing is, it makes you angry. And it makes the woman that I've spoken to since that day in May when that happened, we're all really pissed off. And there's one thing that you can say: we might keep going. We might keep doing the important work that we do because we care about that, but we don't forget. So I want to really thank this committee for this opportunity so that we have a place to push back and hear from all these fabulous women that are presenting. Fantastic. Kia ora.
Kia ora, thank you. Nia.
Malone, kia orana and talofa. Ko toku ingo ko Nia Bartley, E2 Women's Committee and Executive Board Member and co-convener of the CTU Committee Pacifica. I just also want to give props to our co-convener, Wheeti Haenga, who should be here, who's here in spirit, and our other committee member, Karen Brown, who's absent. I also want to mihi to our PSA Women's Network Comrade Sisters who presented before us. I'm also a PSA member, so, we feel and hear your pain, the passionate pain. I'm here with my E2 Comrade Sisters to support our members in highlighting the cruel chaos which created with the annihilation of 33 pay equity claims. This was the true ram raid no one was expecting. And executed with such callous urgency and political misogyny. We're here to say it needs to be reversed ASAP. Clearly, the architects of those decisions have never gone without, have never had to leave grocery items at the checkout, have never had to stress on getting the basics or skipped bills to make ends meet. They have the means to live a decent life. When I was a student, I did caregiving, kitchen and cleaning mahi. It was hard, skilled work and the pay was low, but I loved it. I enjoyed caring for the residents where they became part of our whānau. The staff were mainly Māori and Pacifica. We are natural with our aroha to care for others, but it's not true that love don't cost a thing because we had bills to pay and our families to support. We still do. I, together with other Pacifica women workers, have been working for free in comparison to Pākehā men since last Thursday, October the 9th, right through to the end of the year. This is my reality. This is the reality of my current generation, previous generations, and unless something is done for future generations. How has this been normalised? We're supposed to be a just and civilised society, yet extreme division has crept in between those who are set and sorted versus the majority. Working poor is the norm. Unemployment, homelessness has skyrocketed. Major exodus overseas for those who can, for a better life. Can you blame them? Life as we have known it has changed, and the milk and honey is too expensive. Those of us remaining here are fighting for our just society. We're working the one job or more. We're paying our taxes. We need a government who cares, one truly for the people. We have become slaves to an unstable rhythm, not of our choosing. Where is the manaakitanga of all, not just to the wealthy? Honouring pay equity is honouring and respecting all wahine of Aotearoa. Pay equity would have honoured our home and care support workers, the residents and clients in our care. It would have honoured all essential and low to medium paid professions. It would have recognised and acknowledged their worth. Pay equity is not a nice to have, it is an absolute right for all of our wahine workers. It needs to be implemented with urgency. Hakatai lahi lele for this platform to amplify our members' voices. You have provided hope, love, and a golden lit pathway to redeeming, to reclaiming and retaining our mana. Kia manawea to you all. Pay equity now. Ake, ake, ake.
Kia ora, thank you so much. I guess I've got a question, and I've taken your quote. I'm going to quote it, I'm afraid. The ram raid no one was expecting. And it's that no one was expecting, because it sounded like, from all of your examples, that there was a lot of work going on in the background, building up the claims that had been filed. And then out of the blue, from nowhere, all of a sudden your claims are just annihilated with a piece of legislation that came without warning and without a public hearing, which is ergo why we're having this People's Select Committee. So do you want to just talk a little bit about the amount of effort that went into preparing for the claim, and what it felt like to have the claim cancelled in the way that it was?
Sue, did you want to respond to that, please?
Yes, it was hundreds of hours of work, hundreds of interviews, of talking to people, of rallies, of explaining to people, because when we first started going out, well, for me, with the care and support, the rate at that time that we were looking at was $26 an hour, and the women were on $13.75. So when we were saying this is what you are valued at, there wasn't a meeting we didn't go to that someone said, "You're dreaming, Sue, it's never going to happen." And it did happen. And now the change that we have is that women actually are now recognising. So there is a silver lining in the hours and hours of work, that women now in those industries recognise they should be valued and respected for the work that they do, that it's really important. So yeah, to have it ripped away the way that it was is there's an undercurrent of anger. You know, there's this thing that's growing, and I feel the passion in it, and I believe that we standing together, we will have our voices heard. But yeah.
Kia ora. And quickly from Steve, just before we wrap up. Thank you.
Yes, look, I feel the passion this morning, and it's very upsetting. And thank you for your work. So you mentioned something about the comparators in the male-dominated industries. I thought the process got great granularity. Can you just give us an update on that? You mentioned it yourself.
Yeah, I did. So the comparators that we used in the care and support, I'm not sure what you're asking me, but the comparators that we used were the prison guards, the customs officers, and fisheries officers. Yep. All of those, we drilled down into what is the skills that they need.
Yeah.
Is that what you mean? Yeah.
Gotcha.
Well, what are the skills that they had, and then what are the skills that the women in the similar, because it's, well, prison guards in particular, you know, it's a similar job, although a completely different clientele.
Yeah.
But they have amazing conditions with all sorts of, extra allowances and and a huge and 30% more in pay. So yeah.
Yora, look, thank you all very much. Again, another very powerful submission, and I think it's people that are working at the coalface, having the direct relationships with their union members. They've been able to make a very strong case in front of this People's Select Committee. I just noticed Jackie's put up her hand. We're running short of time, but if you
just a request to get the written notes, please. It's marvellous, all your presentations. Thank you so much.
Yes, and I should actually remind people to do that, but Jackie has been consistent in reminding people that we really do want to have your written notes because they're such an easy way to recall language like the ram raid no one was expecting. Sorry, I had to say that again. So thank you very, very much for your submission, and we will move on to the next one. Kia ora.
Kia ora.
And the next one, and I'm sorry if I pronounce this incorrectly, but Naomi Maderios, and working as an advisor for NZEI, presenting on her own behalf, creative director and a campaigner. Do we have Naomi there?
Hi, kia ora.
Kia ora, welcome.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, great.
Okay, sweet. Am I all good to go?
All good to go. We've read your submission and happy to hear from you, key points, and then allow some time for questioning. Thank you.
Awesome. Morena koutou, ko Naomi ahau. My name's Naomi Maderios, and firstly, I would like to thank you all, not just for the opportunity to speak to the committee, but also for setting up the People's Select Committee on Pay Equity. I do think it's somewhat of a travesty that it's needed in the first place, but thank you for doing this work. I've taken my submission as read, and I also want to acknowledge, because I've watched a lot of them, all the amazing people who have spoken to this panel up to date. There's been so many amazing people talk, and it's been quite inspiring. So I just want to acknowledge them. And I'm also well aware that a lot has already been covered very well. So I'll try and kind of give a unique-ish perspective. But yeah, it's there's been a lot of ground covered. I've spent the last decade advocating for workers' rights through my work with unions, political parties, government, communities, organisations, etc., and by telling stories that inspire change. So I've interviewed hundreds of women and workers, and this includes teachers, teacher aides, learning support staffs, learning specialists, ECE teachers, kindergarten teachers, Te Whatu Ora nurses, primary healthcare nurses, aged care nurses, disability support workers. Kind of get the gist. Is a long list of jobs. Not every interview was about pay equity, but almost every single interview was with women and workers in female-dominated industries, workers directly affected by the pay equity legislation and the government's changes to the Equal Pay Act. There's no dressing this up. These changes are deeply misogynistic and racist. They should never have been allowed to happen. My submission will focus on two-ish areas, joined kind of together. The silenced voices of the women and workers which were excluded from the consultation, and the alarming lack of moral compass evident within this coalition government. I don't claim to be a pay equity expert, but through my work and personal interest, I do have a good understanding of how the pay equity system operates. So I'm familiar with the process that allows, workers and employers to fairly assess roles that have been historically undervalued because of the sector being female dominant. And a key part of that process was the use of comparators, an approach that, from what I can gather, quite a lengthy approach, but effective way of kind of essentially ensuring a fair outcome. So I get why the comparative process was needed, but you don't actually need a comparative process to see the inequity that was already there. I've spoken with youth social workers, 4 years of training with decades of experience, who are paid less than their 18-year-old sons working in unqualified construction jobs. That is not to say, by the way, that construction workers should get paid less. I've interviewed nurses and healthcare assistants who go to food banks, teachers just recently at an NZEI conference who every staff room conversation is around where can you get a job in Australia. Librarian who can't afford flights to the South Island to see her dying father. You know, like this, you don't need a male comparator to know that these jobs and where they sit on the pecking scale, so to speak. I want to read a couple of quotes from a selection of interviews. I know you have heard from a lot of women that have been affected by this, but I do feel a responsibility to amplify the voices of those who volunteered their time to talk to me when time is so precious. I won't name them, but I have the clips available for the panel that I can put into a folder for reference. A pay equity settlement for me would mean that I could pay rent and have a budget for food. That was a teacher aide. We have so many qualifications to do this job. It's 8 jobs in one, and we're getting paid the same as minimum wage. I was a healthcare assistant. At a personal level, it would mean I could get my roof fixed. It's raining in my kitchen currently. That was a teacher. They expect us to work 24/7, literally keeping people alive, and they want to pay us pennies for it. There's an aged care nurse. It would mean I could jump on a plane and go see my dad, who's really suffering at the moment. That's a librarian. When the pay equity canes got cancelled, I was very, very upset when I heard. I had tears in my eyes. I was involved in compiling the data around what carers do across the country, both in hospitals and out in the community. What carers do is incredible, and they should be recognised for that. They add so much to the lives of vulnerable New Zealanders. So that lady was an aged care worker. It would mean I could afford medical expenses, have security in my life, and not have to come home at the end of the day and look on Seek to find a second job. It's a teacher aide. It feels like the government has given us a big slap in the face, saying you're not worthy. That was a nurse. This isn't okay. When some of the highest paid public servants in the country can deny low-paid women fair wages and mislead the public and, in my opinion, mock the issue on some occasions, there's something seriously wrong. It's a serious moral failure. Chris Bishop and Christopher Luxon both laughed to the media as they claimed librarians were being compared to fishery officers. The government has justified most of its changes by criticising the comparator model, suggesting the previous system produced absurd comparisons, like the librarian and fishery officers example that was used a lot in the media. That in itself is alarming. It means one of two things. Either the government doesn't understand how pay equity works, or they do and they're deliberately attempting to mislead the public while gaslighting working women. It's either incompetence or cruelty, and I honestly do not know which one's worse. And actually for some of them, it's probably a mix. Pay equity is not just the right thing to do. After years of working with these women, it is literally a lifeline for them. So many of them prior to the changes cited this as kind of, a light at the end of the tunnel. This rollback has been heartbreaking, infuriating, and I think it will remain a dark stain on our country's records on women's rights, and an even darker stain on this government's record. The government should apologise to women, workers, and all the employers that were acting in good faith. I've heard a lot from this select committee, the likes of Tracy Martin, talking about, employers who also have, had the world, surprised by this as much as everyone else. The changes to the Equal Pay Act should be completely scrapped, and I believe safeguards should be put in place so this can never happen again. And that's pretty much it from me, but happy to take questions.
Thank you very much. That's also another incredibly powerful submission. I kind of feel like it's complete in its own. I mean, I've written down, some of the quotes, or not just words from the quotes, a slap in the face, experiencing a feeling of not being worthy, and I just felt my heart sink with every single one of those phrases that you repeated, and and then to put that up against the sense that members of the government were mocking the issue, demonstrating a moral failure. I mean, I don't know what else is to ask you, because you've just presented such a powerful voice on behalf of the silenced voices who have been excluded from the process, just to quote you again. And Marilyn Waring has arrived, and now you are very lucky to have the first question on the last day from the woman to whom we owe this whole select committee process, the People's Select Committee. So, Marilyn.
Kia ora, Naomi, and thank you for that. I'm interested to know if the people you're talking with, overwhelmingly women, ever use the word dignity.
It's been a lot of interviews over a long time. I can't say it's a word that is mentioned that I kind of think, oh goodness, a lot of mentions of the word dignity, but there is definitely a sense of kind of worthlessness, and the appreciation really seems to come from the people that they help, and not from the government itself. I mean, most of these roles are public service roles, not all of them, but most of them, and it kind of, I wouldn't say dignity is a word that I've heard heaps, but I've definitely heard this kind of, lack of respect, or lack of having worth in, basically feeling like they're not worth as much as what we all think they are. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's just that, it has a particular human rights context, that word. So I'm always interested if it actually comes from the people being affected, as opposed to the rest of us imposing it on them. So, kia ora, thank you.
Kia ora, and we've come to the end of time for this submission, but I noted Jackie had her hand up, and possibly to remind you, if it's possible, anything that you have in writing to submit through to us. And if it wasn't, then I'll just allow Jackie to potentially submit, to you. I mean, you'd be quite happy to receive any more questions if we had them for you. To respond in writing. That'd be great. Thank you very much. And next we move to the Disability Support Worker Group from ETU. And we have an oral submission, so we haven't received a written submission from this group, but they are presenting to us. Kia ora, welcome, Gordon.
Yeah, welcome, and thanks for the time, but I'm not going first today.
And Nikki.
Kia ora.
Kia ora.
We're just waiting on Diala.
Right, one more to come into the room. There she is, Diala. Diala. Oh, that's an unusual name. Thank you. So kia ora and welcome. As I say, you haven't presented a written submission, but we're all ears to hear your oral submission, and very keen to hear from you. Thank you. And when you're not speaking, can you turn your microphones off, because the camera has a habit of focusing on you if you breathe.
Kia ora, I'm Diala and I'm a support worker. I've worked in the care and support service industry for over 20 years. I've supported a diverse group of people in dementia, aged care, children's special needs teaching support, and neurodiverse mentally and physically disabled support, of which all of these people are considered to be the most vulnerable people in our society. When we got the pay equity funding in 2017, I, like most support workers, felt that we had finally gained some recognition that the work that we do in the healthcare and support service industry is really important, requires a high level of skill and expertise, and has always deserved to be valued equitably with other comparable work, such as customers officers. Even when the 2020 global pandemic hit, support workers were deemed essential to keeping the people we support healthy and safe, and we helped save lives and kept New Zealand running. I would like to discuss the impacts of funding cuts to mental health and disability support services, which has led to massive staffing shortages and continues to undermine the autonomy and freedoms that workers and the people we support once had. Lack of staffing in our industry often means that workers are experiencing large amounts of stress to get things done. I've seen people that we support in their PJs at 3 p.m. in the afternoon so that they simply can be showered and everything before bedtime. I've seen people stuck at home, missing out on doing things that they like swimming or biking, even walking, because there are no other staff to take them. I've seen staff burning out because they're compelled to work excessively long hours due to a general lack of staffing. I've seen many experienced workers leave for better paid work elsewhere. On the flip side, new workers often lacking experience in the industry are cheaper to employ and only stay short term. Bullying at work between workers and management is also increasing. EAP is helpful, but is only a temporary fix. I've seen service users go missing because of lack of staff support. I've seen service users and workers harmed because of lack of staff training and experience. In general, short staffing poses a huge health and safety risk to support workers and service users alike. What concerns me the most is that budgets are being prioritised over the human needs of the very people we are supporting. Most human beings need whānau and love and care and support for their emotional and physical well-being. For many of the people we support in mental health and disability, it is support workers that provide this. It is a travesty that the New Zealand government does not view the healthcare and support service industry as being important in our society. It is also a travesty that the government are not willing to invest in the actual support workers that provide the care and support that the people need. The healthcare and support service industry needs pay equity to survive. Without pay equity, the once world-leading healthcare system in Aotearoa will inevitably be reduced to a third world status or just quite simply collapse. That's me.
Diana, thank you. And I don't know if you've heard us mention to others, but we'd be very keen to have a written copy of your submission, any notes that you have on that. A very powerful submission indeed. I don't know, do Gordon and Nikki want to add to this? Nikki?
Yeah, my turn. Kia ora, and my name's Nikki Garmansway. I am a ETU delegate. I am an industry council member and I work in disability, intellectual, mental and physical help. I've been working in this industry for 36 plus years, I don't look it, with the intellectual, physical and mental health clients. I've noticed assaults on staff are happening on a daily basis. I personally have been assaulted seriously 2 times. In 2016, I was called in to cover a shift. I arrived, was given a very sparse handover. Staff wanted to go home. I was not told a 50-plus-year-old male was starting to build up with anger. He showed no outward sign. I worked that day with 5 people we support with wheelchair assists. We returned to the home, and when all settled with a hot beverage and a chat about the day, this man got a fright and spilled his coffee, to which I offered to help clean it up. I did not know what happened for an hour until I saw 2 police officers standing beside me. They did offer to pepper spray him. That's never worked in the past. My co-worker said I used my body as a shield so he couldn't attack others. I had severe concussion as well as other injuries and was off work for 3 months. I was personally blamed for his outburst. No charges were allowed as he is under the Mental Health Act. But to this day, I still suffer from headaches because I hit my head on a concrete floor. I transferred 12 months later to Tauranga, where I worked with clients over there. In 2021, I was working here in Taumaranui in a rest home for a few months where I received a spinal injury to my L3, L4 disc, blew it completely out. October the 13th, Friday, lucky day, I received surgery to have my spine in that area fused. 3 months later, I returned back to work at the end of January 2024. All was going well. Then I was removed and put in with a 13-year-old young man with intellectual disabilities, mental health. I'm 5'2", this guy's 6'2". Not bad. 2 weeks into my orientation, I was assaulted by him. We were to do the weekly groceries. It was an activity that he did. It was an activity he thoroughly enjoyed. He was a 2-person staff. We had things covered. The morning staff had returned the bank card to the house, which is usually kept in the car because during the day he was in the car all day. The person that we supported got angry due to not going shopping, and I twisted my back and had the tendons and ligaments in my shoulder damaged. I also received tiger stripes down my back and gouges down my arm from fingernails. Again, the police were called as he took off into traffic. No charges due to him being underage and mental health. I was also again blamed for his anger. Go figure. I filed incident reports on a daily basis due to not working with him for safety reasons. In May 24, another female staff was assaulted, and we were both then removed and placed in other facilities. At the end of July, while doing daily tasks and supporting a young lady back inside, I slipped on damp, frosty ground, twisting my back again. I was then on ACC for 2 weeks, returning to work with pain still. I was told by management, I cannot work while I have pain. So as of August 2024, I have been on ACC. I still have pain issues. I was working in Hamilton, a 2.5 to 3 hour trip one way. On a day like today where it's teeming down, add an extra hour because we have slips on the road. I was then placed on a casual contract with no hours. I'm a qualified level 4 with life-changing injuries. I think asking for pay equity and danger money is not too much to ask for. Our lives also matter. I'm finding with the injuries and a qualification of level 4, it is very difficult to find a job in the Central North Island. The amount of job interviews that I have had and either no response or I'm too far away is very demoralising to my self-esteem. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikki. Just very powerful personal submission. So thank you for sharing that with us. Gordon.
Sorry, I'm just opening my screen so I can read my notes. And it's our understanding that ETUA have got all our written submissions and are going to get that through to you guys.
That's great. Thank you.
Right. First, I'm a support worker. I work in intellectual disability in Invercargill, and in the past, I've actually also worked in mental health, but that's a while back now. First thing we need to do is acknowledge the vulnerability of the people we work with and the fact that many of them will have complex, undiagnosable mental illnesses to go along with their disabilities. And communication can vary from client to client, with some being non-verbal, others with no comprehension of what's being discussed, and no ability to express dislike without expressing hostility. We need to think about the variety of medical tasks we perform. I've done from monitoring diabetes to actually medicating a person's diabetes with insulin. we often deal with restricted drugs, and that can be often in a liquid form, where it's dealing with either pain or behavioural issues or both. And if we get the amount wrong, lots of these liquid stuff are counted in drops, and if you've got 50 mils in the bottle and the last dose the person gets is only 9 mils, somebody's in trouble. Yeah. I've done colostomy bags changes and stoma changes, and it's not uncommon to do peg feeding. The other thing we really need to acknowledge is the absolute poverty some of the people we support live in. I have an example of one guy who for the last year, every second Thursday, I've been taking him to a local cafe for a coffee. I've now been informed that his budget doesn't afford him that cup of coffee. Sorry, I've just lost my notes again. Just give us a quick second. The budgeting is tough for all of our clients, and it's something that's our responsibility. If in the houses it's recorded and measured against. People, sorry, most of our people we support rely on Kmart and the warehouse and op shops to dress themselves, and there's almost a sense of ghettoisation amongst them. Yeah, we need to realise that the more complex the illnesses become, the more medical science improves, the more we're going to see people with different disabilities at different ages and stages of well-being, and the more complex the work's going to get. We need to be able to attract a decent workforce. I sat in a meeting with an employer once where the employer praised themselves because of the staff turnover ratio down to 20%. So I can see 6 faces of panelists on the screen. So that means within 5 years, the natural rate of attrition would have one of you still in employment. They're praising themselves because of that. The people we deal with are fragile. They need some consistency. They need some people who know their communication methods and their needs and wants. I think that's all from me.
Thank you. I think that the combination of the three of you has really directed us to think in the context of the people that you're working with and the impact that has also on the stability of the workforce when you're talking about a low-paid environment where pay equity has not been established. Jackie, quickly from you.
Yeah, very quickly. Thank you so much. Nikki, you mentioned about danger money, and I wonder if that's been a part of pay equity plans in the past, where there's a risk allowance for dealing with vulnerable but unpredictable clients. And if you can't answer that, I'm sure our secretariat can research that. But do you have any comments to make on that?
It may be one to research. I haven't heard any with danger money, but I think with bargaining, each company needs to have something like that in their collective for people that we support who are violent, and take their violence out on staff and other people that they either live with or out in the community. I mean, the young man that assaulted me, he ran into traffic on a main highway, and it was just lucky a truck stopped. So not only did my co-worker ring the police while I was on the phone to manager saying, get somebody here now because I'm going home, the truckie rang the police and said, this guy's just run out in traffic. He looks like he's ready to flip. And yeah, thank God all that traffic stopped, or, he would have been squished. But I think it's something that should be looked into.
Right. Well, thank you very much, and great question too, Jackie. That a good way to wrap up the submission. Thank you very much, and for speaking so personally from the heart. certainly from our perspective, it really does make a difference and will assist us with the work that we will have to do from here on in once the submissions come to an end. Writing. I hesitate to say the report because I suspect that there may be more than one that arises because of the richness of contributions from people like this submission. So thank you very much for doing that. Kia ora.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Now, I think we're just going to have a quick break so colleagues have an opportunity to fill up their cups of tea, and we will resume in 5 minutes. Thank you. Kia ora koutou katoa. Welcome back to the People's Select Committee on Pay Equity. The next submission that we have today is the Coalition to End Women's Homelessness. Do we have Victoria Crockford and Kathie Irwin? Sorry, this seems to be, I can't see anyone. Help me out. It doesn't seem to be coming through. I'm not sure whether we just move on to the next one or... apparently they have to accept being panelists. So if you are there waiting to make your submission, you have to click on something to accept being a panelist. Can we do that?
Kia ora, we've just accepted the invitation.
Wonderful.
Apologies.
No, that's all right. It can be very confusing. I'm confused all the time when it comes to technology. So welcome. And you're Victoria?
I'm Victoria, and I just have to put in, oh no, she's here. Oh, kia ora e hoa.
Kathie's here, right. So we'll have Kathie as well. And look, we've read your submission. Please speak to it, raise the highlights that you want to emphasise, and leave some time for questions for us. Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, kia ora koutou. Thank you for having us for this process. And I've really, I've been really impacted sitting here listening to the submissions prior as well. So I'm just going to do a really brief introduction of our why and why this connects to the work that you're doing. So we were formed, I'm going to say 2 years ago now, the Coalition to End Women's Homelessness, out of a recognition that we have absolutely no clarity around the policy and funding settings that specifically address women's experiences of homelessness. At the time that we were founded, we had a homelessness action plan, and women were mentioned once on page 25 in the context of exiting prison in that plan as a cohort. So that's the why for our founding as a group of leaders in the housing sector and in research, coming together to shine a light on what has been a largely invisible part of the experiences of homelessness. So why this connects to the work that you're doing is that one of the biggest things that we have discovered in the last 2 years through our own research and through the movement building that we've been doing is that the gender pay gap is absolutely central to the housing security gap. So especially for wahine Māori and for women as they age, we are hearing story after story of the fact that the financial insecurity that women experience as they age due to the gender pay gap over their lives is putting them directly into housing precarity. And it's starting to show up now in our statistics. We have 57,000 women who experience homelessness in Aotearoa, or just over 50% of those experiencing homelessness, and an increasing prevalence of those women, according to research we undertook late last year through the IDI Older Woman. So I'm going to throw to Kathie, who I know you know, but she's here in her role with us as our kaiho too, and we're really privileged to have her in that role. And Kathie e hoa, before you have to head off, did you want to jump in with our insights on this disproportionate impact for wahine Māori?
Tuatahi ki a koutou ngā wahine o tēnei rōpu, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. We've recently just released a tool that is our gender analysis toolkit from a Te Ao Māori lens. And one of the things it throws up is as Vic has just been referring to it, the combined impact of the intersectionality that affects Wahine Māori differently to other groups of people. So when you look particularly at older women, the compounding impact of negative forces all through their lives leads to a situation which the Retirement Commission research on what does retirement look like for Māori, increased precarity and really an inability for people to be able to fight those structural factors at a personal level. I think the other thing that you compare that with, especially in the retirement space, is the way some people are able at in their older years to look at the benefit of compounding interest. And we just see too many of our wahine Māori who are living with the impact of that combined negative sets of barriers that they had to live with. So their situations are worse, and the pay equity issues for wahine Māori, particularly across generations, are really putting our older women in a very precarious position.
Kia ora, and I think Kathie described it beautifully, is not quite the right word, perhaps aptly, recently about, some people are benefiting from compounding interest and some people are experiencing compounding impact. And I think if we were to summarise our submission, that does it so well, and the compounding impact of pay inequity over a lifetime is coming home to roost for our society. So lots of housing providers now are seeing women who will have never touched the sides of social services, may have been in their own homes that they owned or in the private rental market, and they are coming to transitional housing providers with absolutely no options left after they've been asked to leave because the home is being sold, the rent has gone up, or indeed they've sold their home and they're unable to afford to take up an option back in the community where they live or near their family. So throughout the research that we did, we heard many, many stories of women who are experiencing for the very first time this type of precarity, and it's absolutely related to their financial insecurity. And to Kathie's point, women, wahine Māori, have told us stories of having to leave their whenua, to move islands, actually, to move from the North Island to Waiponamu in order to find accessible, affordable housing. So that's the summary. You've got the written submission, I know, and we just wanted to leave some time for you to ask your patai, because hopefully you have some.
Yeah, kia ora, thank you so much. And, I've just written down compounding interest, which is your KiwiSaver model, versus compounding impact of pay and inequity. And what a powerful synergy those two lined up together create. So thank you. That will appear in something that I write in the future. I know that. So thank you. Steve.
Thank you. And the research is going to be so powerful for us. I can't believe the number of 57,000, but we saw it beginning only 4 years ago. It was manifest in our community. Can you break it down by territorial authority?
We can, although look, to put on the record here, gender disaggregated data is one of the reasons why we were formed, because it's very, very difficult to get your hands on. So we advocate strongly, it's one of the pillars of our work and our funding is for good gender disaggregated data in the housing sector. We've managed to get some in transitional housing, which shows that, as we suspected, women in Auckland are nearly in transitional housing at nearly double the rate of men. So any changes to transitional housing funding will have an outsized impact on them. But we fight tooth and nail to get our hands on that data and paid a significant amount of money actually to go into the IDI and just get it out ourselves. But to your point around territorial authority, yes, what we can tell you about older women is that there are hotspots around the country, and they include Tairāwhiti, Tamaki Makaurau, Auckland, unsurprisingly perhaps, and interestingly the west coast of the South Island, and a lot of that is related to uninhabitable housing, so that definition of severe housing deprivation via a lot of older women and uninhabitable housing. And that is data that was provided by what was then the Social Wellbeing Agency, is now the Social Investment Agency, as part of their work on older people late last year.
Kia ora, Sue Bradford.
Kia ora, thank you very much for the submission and for all the work you do. It's amazing to see this kind of research coming out now, because in the past, earlier times, it was so hard to get this kind of information. I'm so grateful for the work you're doing in relation to all the work against poverty, you know, the whole complex of issues. I just wondered, in the research, is there anything around, just as you were being asked about geographical breakdowns, is there any breakdown on sources of income, like, for example, women that have been on the benefit most of their lives versus those that may have been in the kind of low-wage occupations that we've been talking about with this committee?
Yes, so it's such a good question, and I'm going to make sure that you get all of our graphs in high resolution, so you can include them in your report, because one of the biggest findings of the research is that women are receiving some form of benefit at a significantly higher proportion than men experiencing housing deprivation. So comparing those in similar living situations, and then again, women experiencing severe housing deprivation at a significantly higher rate than other kind of women in the population. But that was one of our key findings, is that the sole parent benefit in particular is one of the conditions holding women in poverty and housing insecurity. And they describe that in their own words throughout our research as well. So I'll make sure that you get all of those graphs supplied to you if you would like to use them. They're all labelled as to where they've come from and who's supplied them.
Thank you. Kia ora.
Kia ora. That's an incredibly powerful submission. I don't see any other hands up. Oh, yes, I do. Nanaia Mahuta.
O tina korua mihi ana kia korua me o pukinga o mātanga e whāna ki tēnei kaupapa Kathie, pai te kiti a koe. I too picked up on that metaphor of compounding interest and compounding impact. And I'm wondering, it might be too early to say, but from the research that you have done, that connection between and we've spoken about it in the committee, about the intergenerational impact of not addressing pay equity, the choices women will make in terms of which jobs and things like that. But it seems to me the link that you're making between increasing precarity or vulnerabilities linked to issues like pay equity plays out in homelessness, plays out in some of the data that you've got, lower uptake of driver's license and things like that. So I'm just wondering if there are other critical correlations that you might draw to our attention so that we can make use of the research that you've done to date.
Kathie, was there anything you wanted to jump
in? I think I'd offer one thought and then hand back to Vic. I'm recently appointed into this role, so newer to the work than Vic is. But, you know, one of the other things to keep in mind when we're reading the data as it's linked to housing options and homelessness is Justice Joes Williams' analysis of the Cook's Law, Coopy's Law clash in terms of how the codes that inform public policy are so informed by Western thinking. So it's all around the individual. And of course, one of the things that the Coalition to End Women's Homelessness faces is the land theft that leaves wahine Māori bereft of the collective options that papakainga housing could offer in a space like this in terms of social solutions. So when historically and intergenerationally that land loss has been eked away, sometimes ripped away, then it means that the solutions available in a modern context are framed more by colonial options, not by choice, but by history. So that's one of the compounding impacts intergenerationally, is tied particularly to the whenua and the loss of the whenua, and that's why we called our gender analysis tool the Papatūānuku paradigm. It starts in the earth, it starts with the earth, and if we don't move correctly from that loss of land, then the solutions are increasingly individual and Western in their framing.
Yeah, well, kia ora, Kathie. And I think then to draw on that thread, is the fact that at a really practical level, Nanaya, if you do not look after mums, you're not looking after children. So when we think about the amazing work that our colleagues at Manaaki Rangatahi and others do to advocate around youth homelessness, one of the things we can agree on is those tamariki sleeping in cars are not homeless, their mums are. And we can show that in the research too, because the women experiencing homelessness, most of them are between 18 and 30, and most of them have 3 or more children. So when you're talking about intergenerational impact, we're talking about impact on education opportunities, the inability, to kind of put down roots and make friends and create connections in community. And I think that's another really important point is if we are holding women in poverty through pay inequity, we are not giving their kids a shot at a thriving future. So that's really clear for us as well.
Thank you for that. And I can see that you've highlighted further research on young mothers.
Yes.
Intersection between their experiences and homelessness. Yeah, thank you for that.
Thank you. Yeah, that's incredibly important what you just said there. So we don't want to lose that. We want to make sure that that's captured. Steve Chadwick.
Just very quickly, because we were so impacted here in my district, the impact on older women, queer, who had to leave their previous Housing New Zealand home that was then on-sold, and they couldn't afford the rent. Are you doing some research into that impact?
We would absolutely love to. So we are a 2-year funded project at the moment, which is very much, we're very much hoping to continue on into the future and be able to enable a whole range of research. But one of the privileges we have of having Kathie as our kaihotu is her significant experience and work in this area for the Retirement Commission and others. And it is our hope to drill down into particularly one of the things we're hearing for women turning up to transitional housing providers, frankly, is that they have no clear pathways of any other options. They don't know where else to go. So also that pathway to housing insecurity aspect is so important. And it's landing at the doors of transitional housing providers predominantly. So we're really worried about the defunding of that model. Yeah.
Thank you.
Kia ora, thank you. We look forward to receiving any of the additional information that we can utilise in our reporting. It's going to be incredibly helpful. Thank you so much for taking the time to make a submission, and I'm glad it's kind of coming to the end of the hearing so that you were here on the last day of this first ever People's Select Committee. So thank you very much.
Very privileged. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Kia ora, Kathie. The next submission is from the Association of New Zealand, I'm getting it wrong, Social Workers, Aotearoa New Zealand Association of Social Workers. I'm reading it from behind you, Bronwyn, and Nathan. So thank you both for being here. We've read your submission and would like to hear from you, touching on the main points, but leaving time for us to ask questions. Thank you very much for being here.
Ina rangatira tēnā koutou katoa tere te mihi ki a koe, Madam Chair. Ko wai au ko te rarawa te iwi no pangari me hamoa a hau ko Nathan Chong-Nee tāku ingoa he Chief Executive a hau ki te ropu tauwhiro I Aotearoa. My name is Nathan Chong-Nee. I'm the Chief Executive of the Aotearoa New Zealand Association of Social Workers. Online with me today is my colleague Bronwyn Larsen, who led the drafting of our written submission and is available for questions and to share her for karo. Ka hoa atu au te rākau ki a koe, Bron.
Kia ora, tēnā koutou katoa, hei te mihi ki a koutou e te haere mai, ko waiau e te Pakiau ki te whenua o Ngā Tahu ki te whenua o Wurundjeri hoki, hei te noho au ki o Tautahi, no ko te rana no Airana uku tīpuna, e Pakia hau, he tangata tiriti a hau, ko Bronwyn Larsen tōku ingoa. He Senior Policy Analyst, taku tūna, mahi e te ropu tauwhiro e Aotearoa, no rewa tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Ka ho atu au te rākau ki a Nathan.
Kia ora, Bron. Firstly, tēnei te mihi kia kōrua to the previous submitters and the rich taonga of their feedback, particularly when it came to compounding disparity. I think they said, we're here today representing the social work profession, one that has historically faced gender-based undervaluation and has in recent years relied on pay equity legislation to ensure a fair remuneration. I wish to start by acknowledging the initiative of those that convened this People's Committee for your recognition of the seriousness of the need for public debate and the imperative of public consultation within our political system. Tere te mihi kia koutou. I deplore the government for undermining our capacity to seek accountability. Their decision to pass legislation under urgency avoids scrutiny. It undermines our democracy, and we call it out for what it is. We do not elect governments for them to do whatever they want unchecked. They remain accountable to us, the people, and we should never tolerate the undermining of our voice and participation in the system in these instances. Firstly, we want to highlight that the 2025 amendments to the Pay Equity Act are inconsistent with Te Tiriti o Waitangi, particularly Article 3, Horitētanga, as they create barriers for Māori and other minority groups in achieving pay equity. This is particularly relevant for social work, given our workforce is 25% tangata whenua. Growing our tangata whenua social work workforce is vital to achieving better outcomes for Māori whānau who are overrepresented as users of social work services, a workforce itself that continues to face compounding inequalities. Equally, our client base is increasingly diverse, reflecting a need for greater diversity within our workforce. As social workers, we cannot accept being complicit in embedding pay gaps for Māori, Pacific, and disabled individuals. Our pay bands lag behind comparable professions. The government funding allocated to social work sits in opposition to our profession's goals around achieving fairness and equity. Secondly, as per our written submission, we want to speak to our experience. Our profession has settled 2 pay equity claims under previous legislation. These claims have been life-changing for the individual social workers involved and transformative for our profession. We have spoken to the impacts social workers have reported. We shared that pay equity has enabled highly skilled professionals to be recognised and remunerated to a point where they can achieve financial freedom. Financial freedom was not achievable for all social workers prior to the NGO and iwi pay settlement in 2022. Let me explain. Whether an individual social worker could apply for a job in these spaces often came down to their individual financial commitments and whether their salary could cover their bills, rather than considering things like passion for the role and best fit or wanting to serve their communities. This placed NGO and iwi social work providers in a position where they were doing real heavy lifting within our sector, but relying on the goodwill and essentially free labour of social workers to keep running. The pay equity settlement changed this. It enabled more choice, better role fit, and less burnout. Our sector became stronger because social workers were recognised and valued equally, regardless of whether we worked for a government department, a community NGO, or iwi social service. However, these gains have been short-lived. Wages again eroded in the NGO and iwi sector. Compared to Oranga Tamariki, a gap of approximately $7,000 existed within a year of the settlement, according to a 2023 report by SPA and PSA. Even under previous legislation, no pathway existed to address this growing funding gap in an ongoing way. Additionally, the social work pay equity claims highlighted a significant limitation of the Equal Pay Act, that being that the scope of claims is specific to the nature of the role, rather than to all registered social workers across the sector. This has resulted in reduced pay parity across our workforce, where one registered social worker could be considered in scope and receive pay equity, yet another registered social worker who is still undertaking social work, but in a different sector, being deemed outside of scope. Some of this, we have since come to understand, was to be addressed in the social service workers claim, pay equity claim. However, as the legislation scrapped this claim, the pay disparities across social work remain and continue to significantly impact recruitment and retention. The workforce issues were explored extensively by the Social Work Alliance in their recent paper, of which ANZASW co-authored. The extensive dire workforce conditions of our social work profession will not be resolved without resolving pay inequity. This disparity is bluntly seen within the tertiary provider space. Our social work educators, those within our profession who hold advanced qualifications and significant practice experience in social work and are tasked with training the next generation of social workers, can have their salaries surpassed by their former students within 2 years of graduating. The flow-on effect means that it is increasingly difficult to attract social workers into social work education, meaning we have fewer educators, which impacts student numbers and places the workforce pipeline for social workers at further risk. This shows the extent of injustice that the Equal Pay Act has sadly failed to address. The Act's 2025 amendments perpetuate inequalities even further, but our point here is that returning to the 2020 status quo will not achieve the outcomes we desire. We seek a sector-wide approach to pay equity claims where professions like ours that have a regulatory component or minimum standard to enter can achieve equal outcomes. All social workers should be recognised for their value and paid accordingly, not just those working in certain sectors and roles. This will require a significant shift in approach and job evaluations within the Act, and perhaps reimagining to find a workable solution. However, given the information MB now holds on professional occupations from previous pay equity processes, we see this goal as achievable. In closing, the 2025 amendments to the Equal Pay Act are, in our opinion, incompatible with social justice and equity. It is regressive policy when it comes to women's rights, Indigenous rights, disability rights, and the democratic ideals Aotearoa holds for a fair and equal society. A workable and just pay equity system is essential, and we would expect to see changes to the Act that are founded on the principles of social justice and equity for all, rather than a conservative fiscal policy, which is the hallmark of this action of government and various other policy changes over recent years. We have only spoken to a couple of the points included within our written submission, so welcome any questions in relation to the points we've raised today or those that have been previously canvassed. I'll give the floor to Bronwyn to hold this space for us, but I end in saying that we stand in solidarity with the claimants whose claims were abolished, social service workers, including social workers, administrators, support workers, youth workers, kaiako, and educators across the system, psychologists, nurses, librarians, and others. We do not accept that the repeal was necessary because of a lack of evidence. That inequity due to sex-based discrimination, in the words of the minister, is difficult to tell. We will not be gaslit. Again, in the words of Minister Van Velden, this will significantly reduce costs to the Crown. That is the reason for this, that the government will accept underpaying thousands of workers, including social workers, to questionably save the Crown money. As social workers, we will always remember that the most important thing is people, the people we work alongside, the people we represent as an association. In order for us to honour those that we have the responsibility to work alongside, the government must honour us. Nō reira, tēnā koutou katoa.
Kia ora, thank you so much for that. And you, like other submitters, have asked us to think of people broadly in those three senses, those that are covered, the workforce, but also to acknowledge the people that the workforce is serving. I just want to, before I go to Sue, I just want to ask a question about how it was. I mean, I'm trying to get an understanding of how much of a, challenge to the principles of good faith were you subjected to? How much work did you do believing that the claim process was live and then suddenly to have it cut off on the 6th of May? Is there anything that you could share with us in that regard?
So I think in relation to the wider social services claim, our specific role here has been one of a professional association rather than a union. So the difference for us is we've been supporting our individual members who are social workers navigate their way through understanding this claim process, etc. But we haven't been sitting at the table per se in terms of negotiations and being party to this. That's happened in other spaces within the unions in the sector. So that has actually been where some of the difficulty has lay, because the transparency of the information has been really difficult throughout this process. And we've experienced that kind of with the social services, but also the previous process as well. I think those that understand this and are at the table understand the process really well. It feels like a bit of a mystery, to be honest, to the rest of the sector. And I think that's something that does need to be addressed, is finding a way to ensure that there's clear responsibilities around information giving and communicating the process and where things are at as it progresses.
It must have been a little bit disappointing, though, to find that the claim was suddenly, that there was no way forward other than starting the claim process all over again. Just even understanding that and explaining it to members of your association.
Yeah, I think a little bit disappointing is a very big understatement there. There was a lot of anger. There was a lot of anger and disappointment, and grief is probably the word that I'd explain.
Yeah, I do think that this is an underlying issue that has not gone away. So anyway, I've got Sue Bradford and Rhea Bond.
Kia ora, Nathan and Bronwyn. Thanks so much for all the work you put into the submission, which covers a lot more than what you've talked about. There's one aspect of it I wanted to ask about just quickly. Has the loss of social workers in the NGO and iwi funded sector accelerated since May? Like, do you know if that's happened? It's quite a short time period, so I don't know if you've got a way of measuring it. It sounds like it was already happening because of the comparison, the pay rates becoming increasingly unequal.
Yeah, I think it would be a little bit difficult to kind of isolate the variable there in terms of what's impacting what at the moment, just because there's just so much change occurring in different spaces. We don't have the means, unfortunately, to measure those particular metrics. I know SPA, Te Pai Ora, has done a little bit of work on measuring that. So I'm not sure where they're at the moment, but we can check with them and see if they're able to provide you guys with any information. We hear anecdotally from individual social workers. That's how we tend to get our information. I anecdotally haven't seen an increase in losses. I guess our sense of the sector is there was huge impacts probably towards the end of last year and the beginning of this year. We probably haven't heard the same impact.
That was from, those impacts were from?
We think the changes in government funding contracts primarily, which is linked to the valuation of social work and how social work is valued as a profession across the field, which is also linked to pay equity, isn't it? So you can draw links there. As I said, it's just really difficult to isolate that variable and say that this has been caused by this.
And through this whole time, including from last year and the funding changes, have you got any sense? I understand you're not doing the research directly, but the sense of the loss, or to what extent organisations themselves in the community have been either weakened or going under altogether?
Yeah,
These are groups that employ social workers. I'm talking. Yeah,
we do hear that, don't we, Nathan? We hear that. Restructures are having to change the way that social work positions are funded, or losing social work positions across the board. We also hear that unregulated professionals are being employed rather than social workers because they're cheaper as a professional group, but don't necessarily don't hold the same skills and expertise, unfortunately. So we are hearing those sorts of things. We've heard about some NGOs going under or having to use their reserves more likely, and having to go against their own reserve policies and things like that. So it has been really tough out there, is what we've heard.
And are you aware, just lastly, of any groups or places where that kind of information has been collected at the moment?
I believe from speaking to SPA that they have been collecting some of that information, so we can absolutely check with them and see where they're at with that.
Yeah, because it all seems connected, of course, and highly relevant. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Thank you. And I think we're pretty much out of time for this submission, but Rhea, if you've got something very quick.
I have. I'm happy for you to write in the answer to this question. Nathan, thanks for your kōrero and also to you, Bronwyn. I wanted to wondered if you could touch further on the tertiary education commentary that you made in oral submission. Realising that we're running out of time, are you able to provide some sort of information as to when you said that often the students that come out of that surpass the working social workers within a 2-year period? That's really concerning for me. So that's one thing, if you can send in the answer to that. But I just wanted to make this my main question. But we're told by mid-2040s that our today's working women will be nearing retirement. And without pay equity, they have spent their working lives earning less, saving less, and accumulating fewer assets. Do you feel, or have you had information back, talking to people, that the concerns now are real for them, that they are unable to retire with dignity in Aotearoa, New Zealand?
Yeah, I mean, really quickly, one of the primary concerns, there's a bit of a joke, I guess, in social work, in that you never retire from social work. And I think that used to be more a choice-based statement, whereas now I think it's probably more based on the reality of people can't afford to retire. So people are looking for different avenues within a profession to ensure that they can keep working beyond retirement age. And absolutely, we can get you some stats around the tertiary providers versus others in our sector. We have all those numbers, so I can put that together for you, Rhea.
Brilliant. Katie Pye.
Kia ora, and thank you very much for your submission, and we look forward to receiving the additional information, because I think it will be very helpful for our deliberations. So thank you very much for making your time available to us. Kia ora.
Kia ora.
Kia ora. And now we move on to Sally Scott, who's presenting a submission as somebody who has experienced the benefits of receiving a pay equity settlement, and what the changes mean for her and the rest of the nursing sector. So do we have Sally Scott there?
Yes,
Kia ora.
Kia ora.
Welcome.
Marina, thank you for this opportunity to speak to my personal experience. My name is Sally Scott, and I am a public health nurse. I was a recipient of pay equity when I worked as a senior registered nurse for Health New Zealand Te Whatuora. The team I worked in within Urariki Child Health was disestablished as it lost funding at the end of June 2024. Since that time, I've been seeking employment in a similar field, so sort of community-based public health. So first off, I want to speak to the pay equity I received with Te Whatuora. Part of that process was comparing nurses to police. Since then, pay offers between nurses and police have been disparate. Nurses have been offered 2%, initially 1%, in 25. We're still not accepting that, and 1% in 26, with a lump sum offer of $325 for each of those years. Police have been offered 4% in 24 and 4% in 25, with a lump sum offer of $1,500 in 25. So therefore, Te Whatuora nurses no longer have pay parity. And as noted in the pay equity legislation, they it cannot re-raise a claim for 10 years after settlement, by which time nurses and police pay will have been increasingly disparate, and nurses will in effect be taking a pay cut. And, you know, even at this point, they won't have pay equity, and what's been offered doesn't even keep up with inflation. So basically, really angry. So the employment I've been looking at for in the community was in the process of pay equity, and this includes practice nurses, Ngā Toa Āwhina Plunkett, and if I was to get employment in any of these areas, my pay would be 10 to 25% less than I was receiving working in Health New Zealand Te Whatu Ora. And something that I didn't actually say in my written submission, but I want to speak to, is I know what it's like to be inadequately remunerated. In my late 30s and early 40s, I was a Plunkett nurse. I worked 3 days a week. I had 3 young children, 1 a preschool and 2 school-age children. In the school holidays, I paid more in childcare than I earned. Even in term time, a significant portion of my salary went to preschool and after-school care. And it got to the point when I realised the cost of family life was not worth the pittance I was earning. And I've used, I calculated at the time how much I was getting per annum after tax and childcare, but I've used an inflation calculator so people can understand. So using that inflation calculator, I was taking home $17,000 per annum. And this is why I think pay equity is just so important. You shouldn't have to have a well-paid partner to work in your chosen profession. That's my submission.
Kia ora. I think that these personal examples are incredibly powerful. So thank you for sharing that, and thank you for using the sort of inflation adjusted arrangements. I think you saw the look on everyone's faces when you said $17,000 was basically your take home after you'd paid for the childcare arrangements. And of course, it's powerful also to say that you paid more in childcare than you were earning at the time. I mean, that's yeah. So that was left out of your written submission, but it's very much now part of the record. But yes, please do send in your written notes. That would be very helpful. Does anyone have any questions quickly? Rhea.
Sorry, kia ora, Sally. Just in your written and your oral submission, you mentioned that you're one of the people that received a pay equity claim. Can you tell me how did that make you and your co-workers feel to receive that, enabling you to contribute to your local economy? Like, did you go out like some of the people and buy a car, or, you know, contribute to your local economy with that after you took some time to enjoy?
Yeah, well, I did personally buy a car. I was able to save. That was the big thing for me. I was able to save significantly, and because we got back paid as well. And so, yeah, I was able to buy a new car.
And just very quickly, did you feel by being recognised and receiving your pay equity claim that you were actually dignified and recognised for the work that you do?
Yes, I did, because it wasn't, we were working in, initially I was part of the COVID response, but it was always an outreach program. So we were working in the community, but it evolved into catch-up vaccinations for at-risk families. And so, you know, it was highly valued work. And, you know, finally, in my nursing career, I was earning money which I felt I deserved. You know, I've got 5 years of tertiary education. I shouldn't be earning a pittance. And I'm a senior nurse, you can tell by the grey hair, you know. So
Thank you.
no, I graduated in 82, so you know it's been a hard road. Yeah.
Kia ora.
Kia ora. Thank you very much for your submission and for sharing the the sort of more personal side of it as well. It is very helpful to us to have those stories. So thank you for doing that, and look forward to receiving any of the written commentary that you can provide to us. That'd be great.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Kia ora.
you.
And now to our penultimate submission. We've got Emma McLean, the founder of Works for Everyone. Emma. Kia ora. Welcome.
Kia ora. Kia ora. Tēnā koutou. Ko Emma McLean aho. I am a mum of 3. I am 53 years old. I'm tangata titiriti. I'm 5th generation Pākehā. I live in Tāmaki, Makaurau. For work, I run my own business, which partners with New Zealand organisations to help them put a care app around parents as they return from parental leave. Through this, I work with mums and dads on how best they can navigate a system that does not value caregiving while trying to build their career. Thank you to the members of the People's Select Committee on Pay Equity and all who have been involved in creating this forum. It feels like work that I imagine we wish we did not have to do, but it needs to be done. And the phrase, nevertheless, she persisted, comes to mind. I stand on the shoulders who came before me, and I acknowledge all the submissions you have heard today and in all the hearings which I have listened to, and am being blown away by the quality of the submitters, by the rich lived experiences, by the stories about the important work of caring, and the data-driven insights that tell us that the Pay Equity Amendment Bill will set so many families back. What I want to say today is very quick, and it feels small compared to the other submissions I have listened to and you will have heard, and also all of your own rich, deep experiences. I'm a novice at this. It feels a little strange to provide an oral submission, as I'm not directly impacted by the Pay Equity Amendment Bill. I've not worked in the public sector before. I'm not involved in the union movement or represent workers through an association. I don't understand in detail the workings of government, how policy is made. I don't have research or facts to support my submission, but I have educated myself on the Pay Equity Amendment Bill, and it felt so wrong. I've actually never been activated to go on a protest, but I protested outside Brooke Van Velden's office in the pouring rain. The government has positioned this as an improvement, and maybe for employers it could be, but I don't understand how this was an improvement for workers that had their agreed claims retrospectively cancelled, and now it has been made even harder to make a claim, which for me, and I guess is the key point of my submission, is the ultimate irony for a group of people that is already overloaded with unpaid work. The lens I bring to this submission is of a mother. And I listened to Dr. Kathie and Victoria Crockford's submission to Toku, all of that. Of all the mothers I have worked with in the last 7 years, as I have supported them to return to work and ask for what they need at home and at work, that's who I stand for. And in my experience, even though Dame Marilyn Waring wrote Counting for Nothing in 1988, the success of the global and New Zealand's economy in 2025 is still enabled by women's unpaid work. Every day I talk with mums who carry the lion's share of the work at home, up to 60 days a week of unpaid work. mums that are working multiple paid jobs to make it all work, leaving before light, coming home in the dark. Gendered caregiving norms persist so that when they get home, even if they are partnered, they are starting their second shift. This is still happening today, even though people might not want to talk about it and mums might want to make stories up about why it's right that they do it. Putting together a pay claim is complex, time-consuming, unpaid work. And it needs to happen on top of their normal unpaid work commitments. The physical and cognitive load associated with keeping families, workplaces, and communities operating. It's almost like the government has thought about this. They knew that an overworked, undervalued, and exhausted group would not be able to fight back. What this bill really says is that we don't value care and the care economy. And that is why, in my own tiny way, I make this submission to say that I'm not okay with that and I won't stop talking about it. Thank you so much. Ngā mihi nui. That's all I had to say.
Well, that's a pretty powerful thing to say. Speaking on behalf of, not me, but all the overworked, overloaded, exhausted group of women who the government could rely on, not caring or not protesting or not forgetting, because, not remembering. I think that there is that people are not going to forget this, no. and you are part of the reason why it's not going to be forgotten. So thank you very much, Emma.
You're welcome.
I've got a couple of questions there, Joe, and then Steve.
Kia ora, Emma, and thank you very much for your submission. I really enjoyed listening to it, as I have with the other submitters as well. My question is, based on this act going through, what impact has it had on the desires of the wahine you're supporting to return to work, on the numbers of those returning to work? Has it kind of waned off? Or have they just, taken the bull by the horns, gritted their teeth and thought, no, we're going to go to work and we're going to fight?
It's a great question. And I'm going to quote Taylor Swift, which I'm hoping it's the first time it's been done in the select committee. She wrote a song called It's a Death by a Thousand Cuts. And I think this is what this is. So what impact has it had on all the other things that it costs to be a parent, but particularly a mother? How childcare is the most expensive in the world. We have paid parental leave only for one parent, only at a minimum level. Part-time work is not available in order to fulfill our caregiving commitments. And when we have to fight for our work to be valued, as I said, for me, it feels so wrong because, man, women do a lot. Like mothers, what if I always remember the words of Celia Lashley. What if we looked after the mothers? What if we had a society that looked after the mothers? And that's what I want. And I see it every day. And I work with mums all throughout, from top to everywhere in a career. And man, the stories really capable mothers tell themselves about why they need to do it all, and how if they are partnered, their partner, doesn't have responsibility. It's scary. And it's 2025.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Oh, Emma, fantastic way to end submissions. Because you aren't vested in an interest group, but you are. And you dared to speak out and get so involved in understanding it. I think you've given us a bit of an answer for how do we sell this message to the thousands of other women like yourself that when they research it, they go, this is outrageous. It's a death by 1,000 cuts.
Yeah.
How do we get that impact when we present our report? And you can think about it and write to us.
Yeah. I mean, the thing that brought it to life is when I heard the stories. When I heard the stories of the people who look after our elderly getting up really early and never seeing their kids.
Yeah.
And their kids are the most important thing in the world. And now they've got to be involved in putting together a claim. I think it's a really good question, because for me, if we want change in this country, we need to activate people that have not been activated before.
Yes.
And I would call myself one of those people. And to do that, we have to encourage an atmosphere of curiosity and of being able to have conversations not in the comments field of LinkedIn or Facebook. And I think if we can have more forums where we can get curious, we can hear people's points of view, maybe that's when we have change, but we're just living too digitally now. So I want to activate people, and I will try my best. I'm happy to be a vessel if you would like to use me.
Wonderful. Thank you, Emma.
That's fantastic, Emma. And if you do have any additional thoughts that you'd like to share, I just want to also acknowledge the work that you've been doing, helping women get back into the workforce after paid parental leave. There are enormous challenges that women face in that environment. People think, we got paid parental leave, but actually that's only part of the story. It's getting back into the workforce. It's about acknowledgement of the skill set that you bring into the workforce when you come back. And actually quite often there's a bit of a gap that you experience in your career as a result of having been absent from the workforce for a period of time. Maybe we should value mums and but also value the well-being of our families, anyway, that I just think this is amazing. You've really been great. We've got one more submission to go. You were the penultimate one, and I encourage you to listen to the last one, because I think the last one will leave us with a sense of joie de vivre or something like that. So thank you very much for your submission.
You're welcome.
Kia ora. And now, if I can just say to all of my colleagues, and I'm going to say this to myself, could you please switch off your microphones and keep them off, because we are about to hear a very interesting final submission from I'm going to say the feisties. So the feisties are going to take it out as far as the actual submissions go, and then we'll come back to close the meeting. So I'm turning off my audio now and handing over to the feisties.
And I'm putting mine on. Thank you. Kia ora koutou. Thank you for the chance to bring our unique submission to the People's Select Committee. We're the feisty, feckin' full-time feminists of Wellington. Our submission is unique because it's going to be mainly sung to you.
Kia ora koutou. Thanks for turning your mics off so we don't get thrown by you joining in. There will be time for questions at the end, of course. Collectively, we feisties bring hundreds of years of activism to our submission. We also carry the activism of our foremothers. Many of us here have ancestors who signed the women's suffrage petition. So do a little show of hands.
And since the 1960s, and in the 60 years since, we have worked hard towards pay equity. We've been doing this for so many years that we are making the submission today from my home in a retirement village. So,
we submit our opposition to attacks on pay equity. We are enraged that all the work done by generations of us has been undone. We are enraged to find ourselves, as the protest signs say, still protesting the same old shit. We've chosen 3 songs to best reflect the history of our campaigns.
So we begin with a classic many of us have been singing. I know some of the people there have also been singing. It's originally an Australian folk song, and it comes from a trade union in Australia. They took a traditional folk song and they wrote it in 1969, and it's called Don't Be Too Polite. Are you ready? 1, 2, 3.
Don't be too polite, girls, don't be too polite. Show a little fight, girls, show a little fight. Don't be fearful of offending in case you get the sack. Just recognize your value and you won't look back.
I sew up shirts and trousers in the clothing trade. Since men don't do the job, I can't ask for higher pay. The people at the top seldom offer something more, unless the people underneath are walking out the door.
Don't be too polite, girls, don't be too polite. Show a little fight, girls, show a little fight. Don't be fearful of offending in case you get the sack. Just recognise your value and we won't look back.
They say a man needs more to feed his children and his wife. Well, what are the needs of a woman who lead a doubtful working life? When the whistle blows for knock-off, it's not her time for fun. She goes home to start the job that's never paid and never done.
Don't be too afraid, girls, don't be too afraid. We're clearly underpaid, girls, clearly underpaid. Though equal pay in principle is every woman's right, to turn that into practice we must show a little fight.
We can't afford to pay you, say the masters, and they're off. But woman says just cut your coat according to the cloth. If the economy won't stand it, then here's your answer, boys. Cut out the wild extravagance on the new war toys.
All among the bull, girls, all among the bull. Keep your hearts full, girls, keep your hearts full. What good is a man as a doormat or following at heel? It's not their balls we're after, it's a fair, square deal.
Well, it could be their balls.
No, I think we could think of a better garment or item to be carrying. Now, our second song was written by our Glory Box duo back in 1990 with a few feisty updates, which we made in 2017. And it's called Mary's Paycheck.
Long time ago in 72, when the Equal Pay Act came, Mary's paycheck was to show the same as hubby Joe.
Hark now, here, woman rage. Listen to what we say. We're sick to death of low-paid work. It's time we make them pay. Seize the banks and stock exchange. Listen to what we say. That man will live to rue the day if we don't get equal pay.
20 years on, Mary still had less, for they said she was not worth more. Where was Mary's paycheck when the factory closed its door?
Hark now, hear the women rage. Listen to what we say. The government has sold our jobs. Big business rules the day. Seize the banks and stock exchange. Listen to what we say. That man will live to rue the day if we don't get equal pay.
Now here we are, many decades on. Pay equity's gone astray. We live in hope the gap will close before Mary passes away.
Wow, what's next, Therese?
Oh, there's so many songs. I think this is, for us, it was really hard we wanted to sort of get the essence of what it's been like for many people and many women in New Zealand who've sung and performed and done all sorts of things around this issue over the years. But one of the ones that we were going to sing was A Long Way to Pay Equity, and that goes on and on and on and on, as you can imagine. A Little Firefighter is one that we had a lot to do with in the past. And of course, the classic rage anthem, which I hope you get to hear one day, and that's called Hey You Fuckers.
So we've chosen to close our submission with a simple, powerful anthem. It was written by an American, Pat Humphreys, and we first heard it sung by Judy Small, and a few of us here were honoured to sing this song on stage with her. We sing it now because we must never give up the fight for equal pay. We've never been in this fight just for ourselves. We've been in it for low-paid workers everywhere. And now some of us live here in the retirement village, where we're supported by those very workers, the carers, the cleaners, the kitchen and the laundry hands, who continue to be underpaid and undervalued. We fight for them and for the generations to come, never turning back.
We're going to keep on walking forward. Keep on walking forward. Keep on walking forward. Never turning back. Never turning back. We're going to keep on singing loudly. Keep on singing loudly. Keep on singing loudly. Never turning back. Never turning back. We're going to keep on loving boldly. Keep on loving boldly. Keep on loving boldly. Never turning back. Never turning back. We're going to reach across our borders. Reach across our borders. Reach across our borders. Never turning back. Never turning back. We're going to work for change together. Work for change together. Work for change together. Never turning back. Never turning back. We're going to keep on walking forward. Keep on walking forward. Keep on walking forward. Never turning back. Never turning back.
Thank you. Thank you. We have time for questions.
Kia ora. Questions. Does anyone from my colleagues, Jackie?
Oh, I just want to say hello to Sue O'Shea. Lovely to see you there. And really loved it. Was just my opportunity to say to Sue loved working with you. But well done, ladies. You're amazing. And I love those anthems. They really are really inspiring.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I personally would have voted for I'm a Little Firefighter, so perhaps we could end with that. Rhea and Steve.
Just a quick question. Throughout the time we've held the hearings, what has been your take-home message from, I guess, what the common thread has been through submitters and that you know and experience every day where you are?
I think the rage, actually, because I think people were so utterly shocked. There was such a belief that we were on a path that was, terribly slowly, but slowly getting to some form of justice. And to have it pulled out and pulled away, it's just so damaging. I think that it's made people feel quite depressed about it. I think that people who are in low-paid positions feel that they're not worth, and I think that whole question of worth is so absolutely important, being valued. So being valued, I think the submitters and just what you have done by setting this up and doing this has just brought a whole other.
Kia ora, Rhea. I also want to say too, I visit a friend here who lives in this complex in dementia care. And for me, the lived reality of the people, the caregivers who work in her household, supporting her and everyone else there, and when their hours of work were reduced, so they didn't make anybody redundant, they just reduced the hours. And seeing one of those workers sitting there trying to work on her budget, nearing retirement age herself, working on her budget, trying to work out whether she should have Netflix or union fees.
Thank you. Appreciate everything that you've done.
Thank you very much. Steve.
Well, it's not a question, Leanne, but our rage has turned to hope, actually, from your voices and your stories. Thank you, because you've uplifted us at the end of a very long and very sad process that we've enjoyed collectively. And hearing you, just go you.
Yes. Yes for singing. Yes.
Yeah, thank you very much. And thank you for agreeing to be the last of our submissions, because I know that I've told quite a few people, make sure you tune in for the very end of our submissions, because we've got a treat. And we did have a treat, but it was a treat with a powerful message. So thank you so much. And the songs go back a long way, which just shows that this is a struggle that has been going on for a long time, and it hasn't ended. And in many respects, a lot of women's rights are challenged in the world at the moment for a variety of reasons. But it needs people like you to remind the next generation, and the next generation are actually helping to remind us about the energy that comes from that generation, realizing that they can take the future into their own hands as well. So thank you so much. The wealth of experience and knowledge that just sits in front of me, it's just incredible. But just to pick up on your point about the establishment of this People's Select Committee, I kind of wanted to acknowledge Dame Marilyn Waring, whose idea it was. If you get a phone call from Marilyn, you just say yes. When do I start? But I've invited Marilyn, and I'd like you to stay online if that's possible. Maybe switch off your sound, and could I ask Marilyn to kind of make a final reflection on the People's Select Committee with this wonderful feisty group in front of us, and just to help us bring an end to this very last of the hearings of the People's Select Committee on Pay Equity.
Kia ora katoa. Yes, it seems quite a long time ago that I worked with Bessie to ethically get hold of everybody's phone numbers and made the call. And yes was the answer immediately from this wonderful cross-section of, I think, of very much as colleagues, so we didn't serve together. I arrived back home up north after the day of the announcement in Wellington, virtually saying to myself, I don't know how on earth you're going to do this. By the time I got home after the Wellington press conference, I had this array of emails, mostly from people I didn't even know, saying, is there anything we can do? And the very first thing I could think of was that we needed the 660 submissions made in 2018 to the last Select Committee on the Equal Pay Amendment. And we needed to see what all of those people had said and who we wanted to invite back to talk to us and where the real changes were. And within a week, all these voluntary people did this. But also within a week, it's been really a kind of a profound, we're halfway, I guess, but to have Beth Bowden, who was a committee clerk in Parliament when I was in Parliament, step up and call me and offer to be the committee clerk, to have a former government chief statistician, Len Cook, call up and say, what can I do? to be able to have a parliamentary researcher, Bessie Sutherland, monitoring the House for us right through this, so we didn't have to have eyes all over the place. To have the former EEO Commissioner, Karina Sulmayo, as our Pacific advisor. To have Amy and Morgan and Anna, who are all in their own right spectacular experts on pay equity. I could never have dreamed that I would be part of the very best supported select committee ever. And I think every one of us who sat on a select committee has thought, if they could all be like this, wouldn't it be different and extraordinary? As we all just sought to make transparent and available everything that Parliament should have heard before they went beyond the first reading of this submission of this bill. So I think one of the other really crucial things is to say how humbling this experience has been. So far, I'm talking about the hearing. So we had 1,637, I think, submissions. We've held over 30 hours of hearing. And that humility comes with being trusted. But people have trusted us with so much. We've provided a platform for voice and participation, but we've heard stories of incredible vulnerability. We've heard exacting academic analysis. We've had extraordinary data as well to support this inquiry. And I feel as if what lies ahead for us to report on this is I feel like I'm holding this enormous taonga in my hand, and we have to translate this and deliver it to Aotearoa New Zealand so that they can all see and hear what has been shared with us. So we've got still quite a lot of work to go and to do, but I just can't imagine that I could have had more fun doing this than with Ria, with Sue, with Joe, with Jackie, with Nanaya, with Belinda, with Lynn, with Leanne. I kind of have felt that my instincts in whom it was that I made phone calls to were very good. And I've been very rewarded in all of that. So thank you to the Feisties. Thank you to the incredible team that have supported us through this with the tech as well. It's fabulous that I think we could have gone on for ages. Every single hearing, it didn't matter how well you thought you'd read everything. I learned new things every single time. And we probably could have gone on learning more things. We've asked loads of submitters follow-up questions. We've asked them for the different comments that they made that weren't in their written submissions, and they're all coming in. All of the hearings and all of the submissions heard at hearings are available on the website. And shortly, all the rest of the submissions that we received will be available there. All of our work is being archived so that this will be available as both an illustration of what the New Zealand public can do when Parliament denies transparent democracy, but also to mark a very important moment in the history of the women's movement in New Zealand and how fight back might begin. So kia ora tātou, thank you to everybody for all of this work so far, and I look forward to the weeks ahead when we can draw all this together.
Kia ora. Thank you so much for those words, Marilyn. And can I now hand over to Nanaya to close with a karakia?
Thank you. Can I ask that we all call into our hearts the heroines and their allied heroes of the past who made great strides on our behalf, but also those of the present who generously shared their perspectives through this process, and with the hands in the back room. Can we also hold in our hearts our tamariki and our mokopuna, who are the benefactors of everything we put ourselves to. Our closing prayer is unuhia, unuhia. Unuhia mai te rutapu nui, kia wātea, kia māma, te nākau, te tinana, te hinengaro, I te ara takatū. Koe ara e rongo e whakairi ake ki runga, kia tina haumi e, hui e, tai ki e. Draw together, draw on the supreme sacredness to clear and to set free the heart, the body and the inner essence in preparation for our pathways forward. Let peace and humility be raised above all. Manifest this, realise this, bind it together and be affirmed in us. Rere hau pai marere. Thank you.